Chapter 494, The Battle of Death March 1-2. Ladies and gentlemen, I, Don, aka Ahmed, am happy to be with you for another year. Happy 2020, everyone, and may God bless your days with love and peace. May we have another successful year and continue this novel that got too long. Way too long for what I was planning for, actually out of hands. Lols. With the volume ending at the end of the Battle of Death March arc, I feel fulfilled and satisfied saying that this fan fiction is my life's finest work, and I am proud of the monster I created. Love you all. Say hey to your mamas, and enjoy the chapter. Part 1. Meanwhile, in the camp of the Hunding Alliance, High Mage Krylin have left once again. This is the first attack we launch at the Worm Cult, and we need him here. Agreed. This is a matter of absolute importance. In the commander's camp, the Lords of the Alliance were in a dispute regarding John's actions and sudden disappearance. They boasted of their power and courage, but when it came to the first assault on the Worm Cult in an open field, they all kept complaining. Silence. Kareem spoke in a threatening tone. The prince, who was but a young commander on a force of 1,000 men, is now leading the biggest military force in Hammerfell, all because of the assistance of one man, because the High Mage of the Alliance was Krylin, who is said to be the court wizard of Strozmkai. It upset many people for sure, but no mage could take John's position so far, and those who tried to sway John to their side were kicked out of his room. The funniest story was when that lady from a certain background tried to seduce John, so he spent the night with her, and once she woke up, she found that John had moved his tent and left her with a mattress naked. No one wanted to mess with John after that incident, and Kareem's position was very much fortified, yet after the late events, where John had to go on errands of his own, those lords tried hard to criticize and overstep Kareem's leadership. However, Kareem wasn't that weak or easy to bully. He displayed his skill in both commanding and power just to scare those power-seeking lords by dueling one of the best swordsmen in the Alliance and making him eat dirt. Not just that, the Minotaur, that is rumored to be the familiar of the High Mage Krylin, is following Kareem day in and day out. Thus, after reaching the size of 20,000 men and receiving volunteers from all parts of Hammerfell, the leader of this glorious make-way was undoubtedly Kareem. And today was the first open battle against evil. The Worm Cult has taken note of the actions of Kareem and finally hoarded it undead in an open field near the Alakar Desert. Their goal was one thing and one thing only, and that is to prevent the Alliance from coming out of the desert, then push them in the Dead Sand region. For that, the Worm Cult has spared the largest force of undead known in the Fourth Era, a 100,000 undead creatures. If not to be present now, where in oblivion did the High Mage Krylin go? The fact that the Alliance is awakening the wards was kept a secret from the lords. Only a select few knew it, and that was because of the spies that work with the Worm Cult. Just this morning, 3 spies attacked Isha alone, and 2 thieves attempted to steal the Spear of Bitter Mercy. This only meant one thing. I know we are 5 times less than the undead horde, but the situation is not bad at all. The cult is desperate to take us out. They can't risk fighting us in an urban field, so they picked the desert where we can't face the charge of the dead, or so they think. Kareem said, "What do you have in mind, Commander?" asked one of the lords loyal to Kareem. "Simple, we have our own fort," Kareem announced, flat and simple. Most of the lords were not aware of any fortress on the edge of the desert, but if that was the case, then it is a welcome change. "And where is that fort, Commander?" "Here." Kareem pointed at a certain place on the central map. The lords looked at it, then began murmuring. "That is but a rocky valley and stone formations, my lord." "Indeed, it is all we need to make a stand. We can drop the rocky pillars atop the valley to prevent the undead from charging. We will take the high grounds to the back and the sides, leaving the dead, just this area, to come at us. We don't want to make it so hard for them to fight against us, so they come instead of circling around us and attacking the defenseless cities to force us out, so we will have to trade some disadvantages that we can deal with later on." "How to deal with an advantage we give up on?" asked the lord. "By traps. Strangely, High Mage Krylin sounded excited whenever the subject of traps was involved, so he must have prepared something good. I guess. Either way, we are expecting our allies from Sentinel to join us. I've talked with King Abbas, and we have 5,000 soldiers by tomorrow as reinforcements. Also, the Citadel of Ebenarm is with us, so there is nothing to fear in the Alakar. The battle plan was laid out, and the lords knew their positions. It seemed hopeful, but it was the best they could come up with. As the lords cleared out to prepare the troops to march before the light of dawn, Isha and 2 other women entered Kareem's camp. War Chief Layla, Battlelord Nagla, and Isha as well. How can I help? Kareem greeted them personally right away. The war chief of the Citadel of Ebenarm was known as Layla, a fierce woman whose face was always hidden under a mask for some reason. The mask was that of an angry lion, which gave her a fearsome appearance. Sadly, that woman was injured at the first confrontation with Zane at the Ansei Pyramid, thus she was being supported by her sister, Battlelord Nagla. Lord Kareem, the Citadel of Ebenarm, will be at the forefront of the battle this morning, War Chief Layla said. Kareem felt troubled by her notification. The Citadel is not a part of the Alliance, so he can't order them around, but they are valuable assets and strong fighters. Having them at the front is bad for the overall strategy. If he is to choose, he would place them as the hidden trump card that will hack through the enemy and strike the heart of its formation. May I know the reason? Kareem asked. The 3 women seemed troubled by his question, but Isha answered right away. This fight is a personal one for the Citadel. My brother Zane, or whatever evil inhabits his body and uses his weapon and skills, is our problem to deal with. We shall take the blame for her. Kareem shook his head and interrupted her. No one is blaming the Citadel for the matter of your brother, Isha. We are thankful enough that you showed up to save Strozmkai alongside Krylin and the others. More to that, not only your brother's body was taken by the call, the Valley of Blades reported that necromancers has taken over their ancestral tombs and stole the honored dead. Many places reported the same. This is a tragedy we share and nothing to blame the Citadel on. Kareem tried to convince them to go back to the formation he prepared, but they were fixed on that suicidal position. In the end, it was War Chief Layla who would lead the assault and Kareem who would lead the defense. A reckless strategy, but seemed rather appealing once laid down. Before the first light of dawn, the Hunding Alliance was already in the formation and marching towards the rocky valley where the battle shall take place. Opposite to them, a black cloud of deadly fumes was gathering thickly from the direction of Hagoth. It was an evil accumulation of the soul snare, spell, and corrupted undead magicka. On the mountains, Kareem observed the situation with a grim face. This is worse than I thought. If that cloud lands on us, we are doomed. He concluded, let alone the foul nature of the spell that can make people lose their sense of direction. This cloud carried an exceptionally powerful poison that normal warriors won't even withstand. If the sky was the problem, then the battle layout would go into chaos. The plan of today can't face a single problem, else the Alliance will get annihilated even before Krylin arrives. Leave that to me. And here when someone offered help with the coming problem. Kareem looked to discover that it is Mir, the most mysterious being in this place. Kareem was an open-minded person enough to accept the Altmare twins Mirren and Miranda in Strozmkai, unlike the other crowns who don't withstand elves, but Mir was an entirely new thing that Kareem couldn't help but put a psychological barrier against. Still, in his time of need, Kareem had to show some trust to an ally capable enough to wield an Ansei ward just like him. All right, Kareem replied. Mir didn't show much emotion other than his tranquil face. He would smile from time to time, but right now, he was just calm and collected facing the dark fume cloud in the sky. He watched it approach as he was standing on a high peak and readying himself to react at the best timing. Meanwhile, Kareem returned to the strategy of the fight. Under the cloud of poisonous fumes, there was a horde of undead monstrosities marching on the dry plains outside the Alakar Desert. They stopped not far from the rocky valley. Kareem and his alliance were fortifying, and the dark cloud stopped with them. They are recalculating their options. Kareem said, do you want me to lure them? Jax, who was tasked with guarding Kareem, asked. Let's not frighten them just yet. Kareem's idea was to make them draw closer until he is confident enough to show the true fangs of his strategy. It is useless no matter how many undead he kills without killing the necromancers, but killing enough undead to expose the necromancers in the core of the formation and swoop them in a fast attack in the principle of his actions. But first, the necromancers must believe that the Hunding Alliance is fearful to face them in an open field, so they had to take shelter in a valley with a dead end, which was in fact true. A single mistake means that the undead will swarm from one direction and the Alliance will be trapped like a fish in a bucket. Part 2. From the point of view of the Worm Cult, this was the case, but it is too ridiculous. The Alliance that we had a hard time planting spies in is now making such a mistake. I'm not buying it, said a Worm Knights. They ought to be scared. Maybe that boy commander has a good head on his shoulders, but the lords with him all value their lives. Their only chance was to stop our charge and counter us with a charge of their own, but that is impossible right now. They are doomed because of their fear, said a worm necromancer. I still don't buy it. Our people in Sentinel reported the appearance of the mage Krylin and the commander Kareem in the king's palace. If what we think is true, then they should be trying to awaken the Ansei wards, not fight us like that, retorted the Worm Knight. Believe it or not, when people are desperate, they tend to get stupid, opposed the Worm Necromancer. The two were senior commanders in the Worm Cult, and their power and strategy were invaluable to the leader of cult who is leading this horde personally. Shut up, both of you, he spoke once. Grand Anchorite, Master Amian. Both the Worm Knight and Necromancer bowed to the man called Grand Anchorite Amian, the acting leader of the Worm Cult in the Fourth Era and one of the most notorious arch-wizards on Tamriel. More to that, looking at his staff that is moving the black cloud above the undead horde, there is no mistake that this being is no longer a human. Some would mistake him for a lich, judging by his old appearance, but the yellow gleam of his eyes exposed him as a vampire, an ancient Altmare vampire. Bonecrafter Bobrak, called the Altmare vampire. Yes, Grand Anchorite, knelt the Worm Knight, removing his helm to show his identity as an orc. Iceheart, called the Altmare vampire once again. Your orders, master, knelt the Worm Necromancer, pushing back her hood to show her identity as a Nord who is going through the process of lichdom. We are not letting those mortal fools think they have a chance more than they already had, said the Altmare vampire. No matter what trick they play, what magic they have, what swords they pull, we are here to annihilate them and show the world that we can't be trifled with anymore. The worm god wills it, so we are victorious no matter what, he said, and stood of his throne fixed on a carriage pulled by 20 slaves. The vampire smiled, revealing his black teeth and old face. He was drunk with the blood of many children that he personally sought after in Hagoth. In his feeling of victory, he looked left and right, forward and backward to see nothing but a sea of undead of all sorts of shapes and kinds. Such a power is a blessing by the worm god. How can we be defeated? He looked upward to see the dark cloud and raised his staff. Such a spell, the stench of 1,000 corpses, is a gift from the worm god. How can we be defeated? He looked down to see the human slaves he gathered to pull his carriage like animals. Those who died along the way were reanimated to join the horde, and another living was placed to pull the carriage instead of the dead. Such power is a right over the living granted by the worm god. How can we be defeated? He was drunk in all and every aspect of power. His arrogance knew no bounds, and he felt like there is no entity above him in the world other than the king of worms who blessed and gifted him for many years. Children, have faith. These were the last words of arrogance said by the Grand Anchorite of the Worm Cult. Master is great. I feel ashamed. Necromancer Iceheart groveled at the feet of her master. Indeed, we were short-sighted. Worm Knight Bobrak bowed further. Lady Iceheart, and I will commence the attack right away. The zealous nature of Grand Anchorite Amian and his apprentice Iceheart was a thorn to the side of Worm Knight Bobrak for ages. He may be from a different worm cell, but the two cells were always ranked first and second. He can say whatever he wants about the others, but in terms of power, the cell of Anchorite Amian and Iceheart was something that can overpower a nation. Still, he had to use the tricks up his sleeve to make sure this attack works. If the alliance was a tough nail to crack, then he must attack swiftly and end the threat right away. He can never forgive what happened to Dalila, who fell at the siege of Rahad. One last thing, Grand Anchorite. Is the Blessed One going to join us? Worm Knight Bubruk asked. Blasphemous. The Blessed One is preparing for the most important event this wretched world will witness. You dare interrupt him? Necromancer Iceheart cried. No, I do not. Bubruk raised his hands hastily. Calm down, Iceheart. Bubruk is right. Anchorite Amian spoke. Yes, Master. Bubruk, it's a great gift from the Worm God to have a great strategist like you in our ranks, yet we are not using this gift this soon. You tend to think too much, and we are in no danger anyway. The Blessed One is indeed our best card, and every time he moves, we are granted an easy victory. Think of how we overtook the west of Hammerfell in less than 5 days. Anchorite Amian swayed in his large robes, feeling the blessing of his deity. But we can't rely on just the blessings, my son. We must get our hands dirty and make our way through the enemy to pave a hard-earned road with skulls and bones. The Blessed One shall not be disrupted now that we got the woman he wants. He shall have a day to rest and wait for tomorrow. The ship will arrive, and the incarnation will be complete. Anchorite Amian raised his arms announcing the coming of their Savior and Messiah. Thank you for the enlightenment, Grand Anchorite. Bubruk knelt once again in front of Amian. Despite the fact that they were outnumbering the enemy 5-1, the cult decided that the brute force is enough to wipe out the resistance of the puny mortals. Such a force they had taken the best of their judgment and led them exactly where Kareem wanted. The dead marched forward. It is happening. Mir spoke. Kareem narrowed his eyes and made sure everything was in place. The valley had low grounds at the front, rocky sides with tall, naturally formed rock pillars, and a high end. The main force was gathered in the lowest part of the valley, which is the center led by War Chief Layla. The archers were on the high sides, and the mages on the high mountain in the back, as well as Kareem and Mir. Once the dead started to swarm towards the valley, the main force started to retreat backward, even more opening a lot of space from the mouth of the valley. Meanwhile, the core of the cult's force, which had Anchorite Amian leading it, started to advance furthermore to deliver the dark cloud of death, the spell called the stench of 1,000 corpses. The main goal was to overwhelm the living by that deadly cloud and take them in one go. It is time. Kareem gave a signal. Right at once, all the traps at the mouth of the valley were activated the moment most of the undead vanguard was there. Asterisk crack. Asterisk asterisk Sarari CK. Asterisk asterisk crack. Star. The rocky sides of the valley started to give a frightening sound. The archers fixed they were retreating fast using ropes they're tied each other with. The situation was obvious. Those archers weren't archers at all, but rather alteration mages. Using the map drawn by High Wizard Krylin, the valley was being disintegrated from the sides systematically for the past 5 hours until it became like mush waiting to be pushed. A strong tonal wave through the rocks, created by a scroll he left behind, took care of it all. The rocky pillars on the front sides of the valley were falling one after the other to the mouth of the valley. The sheer force of the fall was obliterating enough to devastate the best flesh Atronax unleashed by the worm cult. The bone centipedes, the shambles, the zombies, nothing was left standing, taking out half of the vanguard. This alone was equal to the force of the Hunding Alliance in number. Kareem's first move was wild and strong, boosting all the morals with a grand cheer. Yeah, Hunding, Prince Kareem, make way. The Red Guards were moved by the sound of the rocks falling, as if the drums of war were not enough to move them. The strong wave of high morals hit the worm cultists badly and made them feel feeble in front of a strong, organized army. Damn it, those ants think they can stop us? Take this. The Grand Anchorite was infuriated by the useless resistance that barely scratched the surface of his army taking out the cannon fodder. He waved his staff wildly and made the stench of 1,000 corpses cloud advance further at the valley. Shit! Light wards! Kareem shouted for the healers to unleash their wards. Sadly, under the soul snare spell, the gray skies made it impossible for the sun spells to overtake the undeath spells. The wards proved useless from the get-go. Kareem held his insane ward, sword, and was about to use it, but a hand stopped him. I said, "Leave that to me." Mir was still there, standing calmly. "What will you do? Whatever it is, do it fast." "All right." The Elnafay Aldemir wasn't in a hurry, as his foresight granted him the ability to assess the situation profoundly. Once the dark cloud of deathly fumes was about to obliterate the living, Mir started to move. He had the equipment of both Mirren and Miranda on him: the ice blade of the Monarch, the Bow of Shadow, the Ring of Khajiit, the Ring of Finaster, the Warlock's Ring, but most importantly, the Flask of Lalandril. His overall speed and magic resistance were buffed insanely. 1 second he was there, the next he was jumping high in the air facing the dark cloud. What is he doing? At the center of everyone's attention from the Alliance to the cult, Mir was making a bold move. With one hand, he was facing the dark cloud with the Bow of Shadow, and with the other, he was notching an arrow. The arrow looked normal, but there was something mounted on it that didn't look like an arrow tip at all. It was the Flask of Lalandril. Mir was shooting it at the dark cloud. Flask of Lalandril, Elven. Magic Absorb. Magic Reflect. The ultimate anti-magic weapon that was given to the Altmare twins was now being shot like a missile at that cloud. In the eyes of the Altmare, Grand Anchorite Amian, a dangerous sense of disaster made him freeze. "No, stop." Yet no words can stop an arrow that was shot. The arrow, carrying the Flask of Lalandril, entered the stench of 1,000 corpses. Spell and the work of wonder happened. No matter how fast the arrow advanced, it was sweeping the cloud. No matter how much the Anchorite screamed. Yes, and no matter how much Kareem shouted. The Flask of Lalandril absorbed the dark cloud in one go. The pain of having his magicka getting deprived on a massive scale made Anchorite Amian fall on his knees and wither in pain. "Stop that. Bring it to me." He pointed at the arrow flying in the sky, carrying the Flask of Lalandril and the forbidden level spell inside it. On it, Iceheart raced to the sky, carrying her staff and pulling the arrow towards herself to steal the flask, but Mir didn't leave things to the chance. With a twist of his finger, the arrow reversed its direction in the sky and flew towards him. Incredible. Say what you want about Altmare or Aldmer, Kareem was Mir's biggest fan right now. The arrow returned, and the Flask of Lalandril was back at Mir's hand. Useless. Amian cussed at Iceheart. Anchorite Amian lost all control he has over the runes of the spell, ultimately losing the trump card that was gifted to him by Mana Marco. For a zealot, there is no greater shame. Ha! This is an incredible day, my friends. Today we witness the fall of the foul spell brewed by the cult, and now we take their heads as trophies. On me. At the forefront of the Alliance's formation, War Chief Layla shouted under her mask, raising her spear. Despite the injury, the fierce woman was going for a bloody battle in the best form. Citadel, follow the War Chief. We make way together. Isha rallied the martial adepts of the Citadel, following after the War Chief and the Battle Lords. Raise our banners high. We march into victory. Kareem raised the Soul Sword and the Ansei Ward, together making the armor John linked to those weapons radiate like the second coming of Pelinal Whitestrake. The Battle of Death March has officially begun. Chapter 495, The Battle of Death March 3-4. Guys, I'm terribly sorry for taking some days off without further notice. The house was busy these past couples of days, and my head wasn't functioning. I know we are at the end of the volume, and it is so rude to go on a break out of the blue, but please accept my apology. Sometimes the cat spirit possessing me demands a sudden break and takes a long nap. It is a wonder I still get votes and patrons with my lazy attitude. So, a double chapter. Part 1. Blessed be the alliance. The cult shall prevail. And the fight broke out. The cult amassed their undead minions to hoard over the rubble of the fallen rocks, but the alliance was already prepared and secured the high ground, and there where the clash happened. Secure every spot. Hold the formation tight. The large undead creatures are slower than the smaller ones. Deal with them first. War Chief Layla stood in front of the lines, followed by Nagla and Isha on her right and left. Master, we should take the fight to the heart of the enemy as fast as we can. Staying here for too long will cause our casualties to increase. Isha shouted as she broke 5 zombies with a swing of her spear. Going down there early is suicide. Nagla disagreed. We have no choice. We can go forward then retreat under the cover of magic, else we're going to lose our position. War Chief Layla had the most experienced background in open battles, so she came up with a solution right away. March forward, take ground, and make every strike count. She shouted and advanced ahead, spearheading the attack with her spear. Hua! The adepts of the Citadel had absolute trust in their war chief and followed her lead. Despite her previous injury, War Chief Layla combined her experience with tactics and acted as the figure who can boost the morales at the forefront of the army, even though she wasn't able to exert her full power. She decided to act flashy and be the center of attention just to give confidence to the adepts, even if it meant worsening her recovery. She aimed her spear forward and focused on its blade that started to give off a blue aura. From there, a strong force fortified her charge and added a strong wave of power to her attack. Annihilating Blade, Lightning Bird Spear, a martial art of the spear recorded by the old spear masters of the First Era, only a few could learn and less could master. The attack opened a path through the enemy lines as the war chief destroyed over 30 undead creatures in one strike. War Chief is amazing. Follow the war chief. The adepts were maddened by seeing the amazing martial art and offered their lives to just keep up with their idol who is breaking the ranks so effortlessly. Elder sister, go easy on yourself. Nagla ran after her and tried to talk some sense into her sister. If you want this to end early, hurry up and don't lag behind. The war chief didn't seem to be willing to stop, but rather, she seemed in a hurry. Damn it, here I go. Nagla couldn't stop her sister, so she decided to take some of the load. She swung her spear in circles and jumped inside a gathering of the dead. Her swings were unnatural and caused every undead in the way to be torn apart, just like that. Fanning Spear, Bloody Wolf Storm. If the opponents were living people, one could have seen a storm of blood around Spear Battlelord Nagla. Unlike her sister, who showed the power of the spear, she showed the accuracy of the spear. You two amazing! From behind, Isha watched the war chief and her master compete on who was destroying more undead. A strong urge grew within her to join the party as well. Here I come, she shouted and ran towards the enemies with fabulous footwork, evading and attacking using the Spear of Bitter Mercy. Ebonarm Spear, Dancing Demon Spear. A martial art that is taught to all the adepts of the Citadel of Ebonarm who use the spear, but to maintain it and reach its peak was a deed impossible to achieve for most of the current and old generations. Isha execution can be described as flawless. This girl, the two masters of the spear who are War Chief Layla and Spear Battlelord Nagla, couldn't help but admire the fine Battlelord they brought up. Isha was on her way to surpass all who came before her in the Citadel. The attack was a huge success. Let alone Layla, Nagla, and Isha, who were the obvious spearhead. The other adepts and battlelords showed no less courage and overwhelmed the undead in a glorious show of strength and courage, but like all things, it had to come to an end. When the warriors reached the lowest point of the rocky rubble, they had already suffered some losses even with the high ground advantage, but as the advantage was lost, they were about to be overwhelmed with numbers. Retreat now. Mages, attack. Karim issued his order for the frontal main force to retreat and the mages to cover them. A barrage of magic spells showered the gap between the warriors and the undead creatures. The healers were not only assigned for healing, but also attacking with the sun spells despite how weakened they were. A safe retreat was guaranteed, except when it came to one place. The right side of the army was completely covered by healers. The magic in that side only harmed the undead and not the living. It is a good thing in most cases, but the worm cult saw through such a weakness. There! Attack! Preach their lines! Worm Knight Bobrak, known as Bonecrafter Bobrak, was leading a force of worm knights and worm necromancers from the right side. He walked across the danger zone, barely scratched by the sun spells, and surprised the Citadel warriors at the right flank. The cultists have passed. To formation. The battlelord responsible for the right flank ordered a textbook defensive formation and withstood the Worm Knight successfully. Fools! Bonecrafter Bobrak was smiling viciously, seeing his plan actually working. He gave a signal to the necromancers following him, and they all started summoning skeletons as fast as they could. Stop them! The battlelord wanted to take action against the summons and overwhelm the necromancers, but soon he realized where he was mistaken. Not all the skeletons were made for battle. Some are made to be destroyed and take the enemy with them. Shields! Too late. Once the skeletons and the warriors clashed, those skeletons exploded violently in the faces of those warriors. Aya! My eyes! Help! It was a vicious move. The spell known as Blast Bones would send a suicidal skeleton that would run at the enemies nimbly, even evading attacks, and giving a chase to its target until it blasts in fragments into that enemy. Those fragments were small and sharp. Their harm is beyond repair, for most of these skeletons are either carrying flame, poison, or disease. You dirty necromancers! The battlelord was angered beyond sense and jumped off his place, aiming to behead the necromancers hiding behind the worm knights. That's the spirit. Bonecrafter Bobrak faced the battlelord and received his attack with a sudden bone shield that appeared out of nowhere, resembling a rib cage carrying the skulls. The battlelord's sword didn't even scratch the bone shield. With a swing of his hand, a scythe appeared on Bobrak's hand and went effortlessly through the battlelord's body. No! A shout was heard from nearby as the battlelord's head rolled on the ground. With his other hand, Bobrak cast a spell, turning the headless body of the battlelord into an undead right away. Go get them! The dreadful situation inspired a lot of fear into the hearts of the warriors who were trying to avenge the battlelord, but soon after, a spear came flying, blasting away the headless, undead body of the battlelord. Dirty, faithless cultists. War Chief Layla seemed to have secured her front and left the leadership to Battlelord Nagla. Die! Bobrak swung the death scythe, once again at Layla, who skillfully evaded and grasped some sand, throwing it in Bobrak's eyes. Dirty! Shut up and fight. Layla realized that she can't prolong the fight because of her injury, so she had to end it as fast as she can. Her spear returned to her hand, and she launched a second, annihilating blade, lightning bird spear. Bonecrafter Bobrak tried to block the attack with his bone shield, but he couldn't even understand what happened next. The spear of the war chief shattered his shield to smithereens, intending to take his arm. Dream on! He abandoned his place and jumped away, taking distance from the dangerous opponent he couldn't recognize. This was surprising. As the worm anchorite of the cell that was responsible for assassinations, he should know all the dangerous targets and the ones that are marked for death. War Chief, we're here to aid you. Some of the Citadel adepts joined the fray to ward off the necromancers and the other worm knights from interfering with the War Chief's fight. The War Chief? How? You are supposed to be dead by now. You think too highly of your cult, necromancer. Layla wasn't planning to waste more time and aim for the orc's neck. Bobrak realized his situation wasn't favorable. Surely the masked spearmaster was none other than the famous war chief Layla. Such a woman was one of the best fighters around Tamriel. Even he wasn't confident to face. He tried to block the attack by using 2 bone shields at the same time, but his movements were far slower than her, even with her injury limiting her options. Impressive. Even the Blessed One couldn't kill her. Bobrak's options were running short, but he is not an anchorite for show. He had a trump card for those kinds of situations. Get off me! The orc shouted, making his magicka explode and transforming it hurriedly into a spell. Layla had to retreat and watch the orc cast his big spell. Bone Goliath transformation. This is bad. The spell only a master mage can cast and needs years upon years of necromancy practices to master. Bonecrafter Bobrak was known as the Bonecrafter for his peerless skill in such art, so of course, he could cast Bone Goliath transformation. The last time that spell appeared in public was during the aftermath of the Battle of Forsworn John Dare, when Arch-Wizard Nerina used it to fight on equal terms with a noble vampire lord, Harkon Fokihar. Bone Goliath pick added to Discord and IG. Damn it. Retreat. From this point on, the fight was fated to turn ugly. Part 2. Hiya. The two big shots of the Citadel and the cult clashed in mortal combat. At the start of the fight, War Chief Layla was both faster and stronger than Bonecrafter Bobrak, but after the Bone Goliath transformation, he became superior in raw power and endurance. Harming him will prove to be a challenge right now. A Bone Goliath lives up to its name. The mechanic of the spell works by encasing the necromancer in an undead, specially fitted to cover them fully. This meant more than just protection, for the Bone Goliath was an undead that has its own power and set of controls needing to take command from its pilot, the necromancer. It could be described as a power armor of sorts. Very strong and durable, powered by magicka, has its own set of attacks, and supports all the magicka and combat skills of the pilot. For that, War Chief Layla resorted to her best martial skills, aiming to crack that tough nut, while Bonecrafter Bobrak resorted to conjuring two death scythes, by both hands locking all the angles of retreating for the War Chief. Stupid. Comparing his brute force to her skill was a mistake. Her spear found its way to leave a large crack on the chest of the Bone Goliath. Then she escaped the range of the two death scythes by evading at no direction except forward. Grah! Bonecrafter Bobrak felt the impact of the spear and took distance from the Battlelord. She is too dangerous for him to take on. Despite the fact that he managed to ambush the Citadel and kill a Battlelord, she managed to steal the momentum and take her adepts to safety, minimizing the loss to the minimum. The goal of the cult was to kill as many Citadel warriors as fast as they could, then reanimate them into undead to make them fight their fellow warriors. Aside from the psychological pressure that would accumulate on a person to beat down the corpse of his brothers and fellow warriors, the cult had a final plan to use those fallen for an assault of a corpse explosion spell to fully break the first line of defense for the Hunding Alliance, which is the whole Citadel of Ebenarm. This carefully crafted plan went into absolute chaos now that the War Chief took action herself. We retreated. A call came from the back of the Alliance lines, calling the War Chief to retreat. Good. Layla knew her job was over and decided to cut the fight here. Stop where you are. Bobrak couldn't afford to let his strong magic go to waste and wanted to stop Layla's retreat, but she was still faster than he is. You won't go. Desperate, Bobrak resorted to casting Conjure Zombie Horse a couple of times. The zombie horses were strong and heavy, which guaranteed they would withstand the attacks of the Alliance as he chases after War Chief Layla, and so it happened. The rubble high ground wasn't much of an obstacle to the zombie horses that pulled the Bone Goliath up. Commander, we can't afford to follow. We are losing numbers. A Worm Knight called for Bobrak, but the latter was too obsessed with killing the War Chief. Before anything else, the plans would go to absolute chaos. Throw the rocks. Destroy the corpses. At the top of the rubble mountain, Kareem was giving a series of orders to obstruct Bobrak and destroy any remaining corpse on the battlefield to avoid the necromancers reanimating them. Damn it. Assist me here. Bobrak found no escape but to call for help as he finally locked the escape route on Layla. Endure for a minute. I'm bringing help. Necromancer Iceheart responded to his call. Meanwhile, War Chief Layla was calculating her options. There is no escape, War Chief. Bobrak felt the victory will be assured as soon as he takes care of the strongest enemy that could even hold a whole flank on her own with an injury hindering her. Heh, you got some guts following me here. Fine, show me what you got. As an orc, Bonecrafter Bobrak was not just some second-grade warrior. He was a great warrior, so he could surely use that. Huh. With a loud shout, the orc started to get empowered and break free from his shackles more and more. Berserk Rage, the racial power of orcs. 2 death scythes formed on his hands as he waved them at Layla from the sides. She nimbly jumped up and twisted her body with the spear attacking the bone Goliath at its skull. A crack formed on the skull, and some drops of blood appeared on the spear blade. A critical hit. The war chief felt her victory was assured, but sadly, she celebrated too soon. A berserking orc can't feel anything such as pain. Despite the crack on the skull, Bobrak used the chance of Layla not stabilizing herself mid-air and rammed her with his supposedly injured head. The ram was too strong for Layla, forcing her to retreat, while the orc tried to seize the chance, using his superior berserking state to attack her, but she skillfully retreated. Dying from behind, a bolt of unholy magic was shot at Layla's back, hitting her without her noticing and causing her to fall short on evasion. War Chief Kareem was the closest to the scene and found himself jumping out of his post to defend the war chief, taking the second magic bolt with the soul sword. Annoying, a witch-like woman appeared in the sky. She was holding a staff and looked rather ugly. It was Iceheart. A second solo fight started between Prince Kareem and Worm Necromancer Iceheart, as Kareem jumped mid-air, deflecting all the attacks skillfully and giving a serious chase to the witch. Isha, assist the war chief. Kareem's voice vibrated over the battlefield, alerting the other 2 fronts where Isha and Mir fought. Isha looked at Nagla, and the 2 nodded before Isha charging on a storm Atronak across the battlefield. Meanwhile, War Chief Layla was in quite a grim situation. After she was struck by the deadly bolt, she fell down, and the bone Goliath that is Bonecrafter Bobrak took the chance to engage with her in a devastating fight. She managed to break his magic, but she lost her spear. He tried to strangle her using her superior bruteness, and she struggled with maintaining her situation from worsening. Break for me, the frenzied orc shouted behind his skull protection and pinned Layla to the ground. As she clung into his arm, he bound her down hard, then stepped on her, causing her to cough out blood. War Chief, Isha's voice was heard nearby, but Layla was too weakened to respond. Bobrak's hand was raised once again, and 2 impactful punches landed on Layla's body. The last attack was when Bobrak raised his hand and conjured a bone dagger. The last attack wasn't missing Layla's heart by any chance, and she felt death drawing nearer. In a moment of weakness, Layla gave up and closed her eyes, but in the next, a slender ebony spear was piercing through the arm of the bone Goliath. Get off her! Bobrak staggered backward by Isha, yet the berserking orc soon regained his balance and looked at Isha. Despite the skull face, Isha could see the nasty smile under that skull as a horde of necromancers, worm knights, and undead creatures. Maiden of the Spear, it is you. Bobrak figured out Isha's identity without much thinking. Son of a fucking bitch. I'll kill you. Both of ya. Isha called for her last resort power, the blessing of Bothia, Desert Wrath. The air around her started to burn on its own, and a storm of sand formed as she charged like a loosened arrow at Bonecrafter Bobrak. Grah! The orc called his remaining arm to call a bone wall from the ground to hinder Isha's advance, but it was broken like a piece of biscuit. Shit! The spear's tip was already pressing at the chest of the bone Goliath as Bobrak started retreating and Isha gave chase. The sandstorm she called around her destroyed each and every undead and worm cultist she passed across, save for the ridiculously durable bone Goliath that the spear of bitter mercy was its only medicine. Die, you fucker! Isha shouted, delivering all the power from her aura to her shoulders and thighs as the spear tip sunk deeply in the Goliath. Then she started lifting him up on her spear. Isha's strength reached an unimaginable realm when she was lifting the large Goliath up vertically, then tossed him to the air. She wasn't done. Oh, she was far from done. She jumped up after him with her spear aimed forward, using what she knows about magic to levitate for a few seconds while delivering an attack that would send the bone Goliath up in the air more. All of those attacks were a martial skill known as Annihilating Blade, Wolfbite Spear. The bone Goliath began to disintegrate with each strike, showing bloody spots of its owner's body being broken apart. An arm flew away, then a foot, then the whole leg and finger were seen. Screams, wails. The orc's pain must have accumulated for too long, and his body was feeling it all in one go alongside Isha's relentless attacks. Stop, please. No, help. As all parts of the bone Goliath were broken apart, the orc was revealed to all who could see as body losing its limbs on a rapid rate. Isha couldn't maintain her flight for too long and soon fell towards the slope of rubble, but she safely landed. As for the orc, he fell right after Isha with its hideous body bleeding like a slain pig. Once it was close to the ground, Isha met him with her spear. Slash! The spear tip penetrated the head of the orc from the neck, going up through the skull and carrying it like a trophy. The cult's commander is dead. Isha killed him. She killed him. Rally the news. Aloud. All the Citadel warriors cheered loudly to convey the news on all fronts. Isha slew a cult commander. The impact of the news was obvious. The worm cultists were unable to advance further from the shock, while the warriors of the Citadel and the Hunding Alliance turned into hungry wolves and rallied another charge against the cultists and the undead. Help! The war chief is injured. Isha destroyed the body of the Bobrak and ran to Layla, supporting her away from the battle under the protection of some battle lords. Meanwhile, in the sky, hold that witch. HY. Kareem and Jax were chasing after the necromancer Iceheart. Ha ha! You won't catch me, pretty boy. Jax snorted as he flipped his wings and blocked the escape path of Iceheart. She tried to evade left, but his lava whip stopped her escape. Kareem had some control over the levitation spell using his magic tools, so he was able to keep up with Jax and Iceheart. Isha killed a cult commander. The loud cheer finally reached the ones battling in the skies. Iceheart froze in her place and looked where Bobrak was supposed to be. She took note of Isha holding the spear of bitter mercy, with Bobrak hung from the tip. Impossible. Hiya! Iceheart had no time to rest as Kareem was swinging the soul sword at her. Piss off. She tried to get rid of him, but Jax was waiting for her. His lava whip held her from her leg and pulled her down. Let go. I said let me go. The witch was infuriated by the cooperation between Jax and Kareem, so she had to get rid of Jax first. She aimed her hand and cast a dreadful spell towards him. Jax had no time to evade, as he was focused on holding the whip to prevent Iceheart from escaping. Once he saw the spell approaching nearer, he almost lost focus, but someone appeared in front of him to take the magic instead. Prince. No. It was Kareem. Once Jax saw Kareem in the line of danger, he remembered his master's serious warning about protecting Kareem that had an or else following it. Sadly, Jax was too slow to help Kareem, and the spell landed on him, causing a dark explosion. Damn it. Aha! The Minotaur was shuddering from the thought that he failed to protect Kareem. On the other hand, Iceheart gave a witch laugh for her flawless spell. Oomph. Celebrating too soon. Yet all of a sudden, Kareem's voice sounded and the dark cloud was torn apart by a wave of shimmering light. Kareem appeared in the most heroic appearance he may appear with. His armor was radiating, and he was holding two swords. One was the Soul Sword. The other was the Ansei Ward. Two voices sounded in his head. One was Prince Ader, and the other was Sword Saint Raiden. To top it all, the armor that John gave him was ridiculously playing along. Royal Plate, Elven Steel Set, Weapon Enchantment Imitation. The armor was a full plate, yet simple, light, and nearly crafted by Wolfer, who was training on imitating the elven craftsmanship. Despite being kept in the corner as decoration, John had a devilish idea while training his enchanting. The enchantment, which required the whole set, can borrow power from a weapon's enchantment and reflect similar qualities on the whole armor. Its flaw was that it didn't work well with normal weapons, and for such a complicated enchantment. It was scripted using the binary method. Combined with the soul sword, the armor would give a holy aura and reflect the power of Prince Ader, but combining it with an Ansei ward, things took a rather ridiculous turn. Somehow, the armor grew wings made of light, swords with some sort of melody or humming was heard in the surroundings as well. The world may have not seen such an image for ages, but surely the blood of Redguards, descendants of the old Yukadons, realized what Kareem just looked like. As he moved his swords, the melody around him started to intensify. The tonal law of the universe moved with his sword, and a mystical wave of sword slash happened. Master, save me. Iceheart knew she was done for. All she could do is to call her master, Grand Anchorite Amian. Stay your blade. A voice came like thunder in the sky targeting Kareem, but the melody around him protected him from all tonal-based attacks, and he continued with the sword strike at Iceheart. Mortal, you dare defy me? Grand Anchorite Amian flew from his camp and targeted Kareem. A deviating power comparable to an ancestor started to pressure Kareem and endangered him, but suddenly, all the pressure was blocked by something. Meanwhile, Kareem's sword strike landed on Iceheart and broke her apart in a withering scream. Who are you? How can you stop me? Grand Anchorite Amian couldn't believe that he was being stopped by an equal strength. Please refrain from resisting. I take no pleasure causing harm to another being. The figure that appeared in front of Amian spoke. It was wearing some simple elven armor, not even enchanted. Once it removed the helm, the face of an elf appeared. It was hard to distinguish what elf that is, yet from the looks of it, the elf was too beautiful and charming. Could be an altmare as they're the best-looking ones, but those pain-in-the-ass altmare are nothing but trouble, and they can't give this peaceful feeling. What are you? Amian directed a question to Mir with a shocked face. Despite being equal to an ancestor, Amian couldn't see through the elf in front of him. Worry not, it shall be painless. And Mir raised the Ansei ward. Chapter 496, The Battle of Death March 5-6. Notification: a new chapter of Beast of the Apocalypse is published on free even for non-patrons. Many thanks to our new patrons. At Plague, E rank. At Core Shade, F rank. Almost forgot. A Double Trouble chapter. Part 1. Mir raised the Ansei ward, and a frightening power came from the blade. Mir didn't like talking too much or wasting time. So with a single swing, he created an energy blade attack with the Ansei ward and launched it at Grand Anchorite Amian. The Grand Anchorite, who was also a vampire, didn't realize what kind of energy was that at first, yet once he saw what the energy did the undead creatures between him and Mir, his ghost almost departed his body from the scare. The energy seemed harmless towards the living, but it broke the undead apart. Just like the sun magic, but more dreadful and destructive. The sun magic is the closest element to Aetherius and a source of life. It can provide actual sunlight to any farm planted, even under a mountain, as long as the other elements are provided. Such an element is the bane of undeath, thus why the soul snare spell weakens such an element. Yet according to what Mir just used, he seemed to be unhindered by the soul snare spell to begin with. The Grand Anchorite was forced to move off his place with a bitter face. It is safer not to block such a strike. So, you decided to prolong it. Very well. On the other hand, Mir was displeased that his opponent took the negative choice that would lead to the suffering of the many. In an instance, a cross slash came from Mir's direction, aiming to cut the ancient vampire into four, but the latter was alert and moved from the sky in the form of a swarm of bats. No matter what you are no match for an immortal. Amian didn't just upset Mir, but also bragged about his vampirism, which made Mir think for a while. You dare get distracted against me? Seeing Mir unresponsive, the vampire decided to turn the tide and rushed at Mir in an instant. Mir was not moving and got caught from the neck by the clutches of the vampire. Any last words, fool? You just called yourself immortal? Uncaring about the vampire's actions, Mir directed a question to the vampire. Indeed. Ah, why? Are you interested in switching forces for immortality as well? Amian raised Mir from the neck, then pulled him closer. You have a fine face? For an elf, your blood is. My blood is what? I'm not quite sure. What are you? Amian bared his fangs, and as he brought his face closer to Mir's. What a shame. For a second, I thought you were onto something. Mir held the vampire's arm and twisted it, removing the clutch of his neck effortlessly. Shah! The vampire hissed from the sudden shift of situation. Listen, undead. It is shameful to call yourself immortal. It is a word that even I don't describe myself with. As soon as Mir's words were done, he swung the vampire like a toy and tossed him down like a falling meteor. Immortality may sound like the goal of many who practice the arcane arts, but longevity is the best thing to achieve. Those who wish to cheat death crawl into the darkness of undeath, but that never makes you immortal. An immortal is a being that defies the concept of death and transcends beyond the existence of the knowable. Unlike what most think, death is a blessing, an end, and rest to all suffering. Those who want to keep living must bear the consequences, and they still won't be immortals, only long livers. In your case, your longevity is based on the unholy concept of undeath. The light of Aetherius flowing through the sun is the secret of all life, yet you, a being of the void, still claim to be immortal? The audacity, the nerve. As the dust settled, Mir finished the lesson of what it means to be an immortal, meeting eye to eye with the ancient vampire whose rage was boiling to a critical point. You dare lay a hand on me? The vampire's body was damaged beyond recognition, but the undead are known to be resilient and tough to kill. The broken body of the ancient vampire started to gather from pieces to pieces, forming itself organ by organ, then limb by limb, finally taking the form of a humanoid, then covering itself with an aura of darkness to form a robe and a staff. Oof. Alas, my words are wasted on the likes of you. Mir's head shook left and right in displeasure and disapproval. You will pay. The vampire ignored Mir's monologue and recognized him as a tough opponent. In fact, Mir was a few levels above John in terms of raw mystical power. His powers as an Elnathay were the closest thing to divine, thus making him the perfect bane to an ancestor-level ancient vampire. You are but a talking, walking corpse. Mir raised the Ansei ward. Once again, what is dead may never rise. A powerful clash of powerhouses happened in the sky above the armies of the living and the dead, one with golden light and the other with dreadful darkness. The onlookers shuddered to the sight of the two powers that stole the spotlight in an instant. Meanwhile, the fight between Kareem and Iceheart was turning into more of a fast chase. Don't run, scum. Master, save me. Kareem was rushing behind Iceheart, who decided she is no match for the dangerously overpowered prince who just grew wings. His majestic power cut through the ranks of the undead horde as Iceheart ran left and right, avoiding him and rallying the undead puppets to distract him. I said, stop. Kareem let out a rush of violent energy that destroyed a large flesh Atronak, the same thing that appeared in front of his city less than a few days ago. The prince's fast rise in power is indeed shocking, but Kareem knew that he is borrowing the powers of Prince Ader and the Sword Saint in the Ansei ward, thus he had to use it wisely. You will never catch me. You will never catch me. Ah ha ha. Iceheart used her lichdom powers to manipulate the army of the dead into a meat shield for the aggressive prince that is out for her head. Kareem spared no effort in destroying everything in his way. I'll catch you. Kareem was infuriated by the shameful acts of Iceheart, but a voice rang in his head. You mustn't let her pull you any further. You're being led to a trap. Oh, sure enough, Kareem was in the middle of the enemy's force, fighting alone with undead coming from all directions. Damn it, realizing the mess he's in, Kareem felt the need to retreat, but it was rather hard to break through the lines of these undead. He decided to use the wings he had to yet in the air. The enemies were more dangerous than the ones in the ground. The undead army had wraiths and gargoyles that could fly and cast terrible curses. "Ha ha! What is wrong, pretty boy? You want to retreat?" From nearly all around him, Kareem could hear the vile laughter of Iceheart, who was celebrating her victory. Surely he had more firepower enough to defeat her, but she was more adapted with her powers and took the fight to a place where she can fully utilize all her skills. Kareem would break from the dead with brute power, but she would lay traps to damage and exhaust him. The dead he fights would explode when they are too damaged to fight. The undead behind him are always more powerful than the ones ahead of him, forcing him to go deeper into the army of the dead stranded from all aid. Iceheart was as crafty as she is powerful, and Kareem was in real danger. What he didn't know that it wasn't only him, but Iceheart also managed to trap Jax into the same exact situation both of them were waiting to get from the other. Meanwhile, Mir and Amian were having a devastating fight high in the sky. Mir's powers were boundless compared to Amian, but not infinite. On the other hand, Amian was killed over 7 times already, but would always regenerate from his remains and rise again. That's not possible. Mir was taken aback by how much effort it took him to fight this undying thing. "Ha ha! You see now, puny creature. I am an immortal. You can't harm me." Mir was by no means puny, yet Amian was drunk in power. He can regenerate from a single drop of blood back into his full state, further proving Mir's point of undeath. Yet what made Mir uneasy was how much energy this undead could muster. Amian too was terrified by Mir, whose attacks would kill him without much resistance. Amian's secret was simple, and soon Mir saw through it. "You are not immortal, but one is surely backing you, resurrecting you each time you are killed." Resurrection. I see, just like that girl. You're a prophet as well. Mir's insight was right on point. Amian was indeed Mannimarco's prophet, the eyes and ears of the King of Worms in the mortal world, exactly like Beth and Bothia. Mir adjusted his powers and readied himself to launch another attack, but suddenly stopped and looked down at the battle between the living and the dead. With a smile, he launched a powerful attack towards Amian, slow enough for the latter to dodge, and powerful enough to land on the undead on the ground and wipe out a good chunk of them. Sure enough, it bought Jax enough time to escape the trap Iceheart has prepared and rush to join Kareem. "Hateful, what are you plotting?" Amian noticed that the plan he came up with to lock the powerhouses of the enemies in prolonged fights and drain them fast was seen through. "Heh, it seems we have reached a deadlock, undead. You can't harm me, but I can harm you, but you can keep me occupied. Still, that doesn't mean I can't keep you in check and ruin with you plans. After all, if there is no army of the dead, your petty immortal won't be helping you that much. Mir may appear as a pure and quiet elf, but he is the origin of both Miranda and Mirren, 2 of the most dangerous assassins in Tamriel. Hateful, I will strike you down." Amian realized he can no longer rely on the support of the King of Worms and had to put effort to fight Mir. Unfortunately for him, he is no match for Mir to begin with. Mir kept throwing attacks at the undead army here and there while keeping Amian in check. Yet Mir's only worry was his reserve of energy that was running low faster than he hoped. It was a race against time, Mir's stamina and magicka against the unending numbers of the undead. Remember to put paragraph comments on the spots you like, rate, and comment on the chapter. Part 2. At the same time, Jax has arrived to aid Kareem in the flashiest way possible. "Prince, I am here to assist you." He landed with his flaming wings burning any undead on his sides, and his lava whip, pulling a large flesh Atronak down on tens of smaller undead, turning them to fragments. Jax and Kareem stood back to back, ready to fight whatever creature come at them, yet all of a sudden, aid came from the most unexpected places. Out of nowhere, 9 iron Atronachs appeared and started to grind the undead around them like death machines. Those are Krylan's Atronachs. These 9 Atronachs were the golems created by John using the Deadlands hammer when he arrived at the citadel of Ebonarm. This only meant one thing: Their owner is not too far. What should we do? Jax asked. Not die and kill as much as we can. Kareem was not waiting for a miracle to happen despite knowing that a change is coming soon. They just need to keep their stand on to lessen the load on those who are coming after them. While fighting, they have already formed a mound of corpses beneath them, yet they can't stay longer in one place, else Iceheart will make those corpses explode to harm them. The best course of action was to leave the 9 Iron Atranax to do whatever they are doing and seek out the strongest undead, allowing the Hunding Alliance and the Citadel of Ebonarm to have an easier time advancing forward and break the deadlock of the battle. Indeed, the forces of the Alliance started advancing slowly and took the fight out of the valley to an open field. Soon enough, the plans were implemented and the diverse forces were deployed on an open field. The Hunding Chargers of Strozmkai were back on their horses and launched a successful assault on the undead's left flank, rendering them to oblivion. The efforts of the heroes in the front started to bear its fruits. Iceheart, release the hounds. Amian was watching battle during his fight with Mir and realized the trouble he is in, so he shouted for Iceheart to hasten the plans. Soon enough, Iceheart, who was hiding somewhere in the army of the dead, started to conjure a different type of undead that resembled the skinned hounds of the Shivering Isles, but on a zombified image. These hounds carried all sorts of poisons and infections, making it dangerous to come into contact with them. The hounds ran and started chasing the horses of the Hunding Chargers, hunting a number of them, as the other escaped within the range of the magic squad. Locking the Chargers away from the battle was the right step to take for the side of the Worm cultists to make sure that the necromancers in the core of the formation were safe from a sudden enemy charge. But the Worm cult has missed the one true enemy they should be most wary from. Iceheart, who has retreated to the core of the formation alongside the other Worm cultists, was sparing no effort into supporting the front lines, sending necromancers and Worm Knights to stop the Alliance and the Citadel from advancing. Even after the fall of their strategies, Bonecrafter Bobrak, the cult had many talents of strategy and trickery that can still lead this fight to a sure victory. Oblivion. The cultists themselves were over 4,000 gathered at various points and cells to control the battle without even engaging with the enemies. Still, not all the plans were working right. Mother. Another 7 were found dead. The one who spoke to Iceheart was her daughter, Mina. I don't care about the losses, or whatever crazy maniac launches a suicide attack and kills some. Master wants more cells to advance further into the fight and hold the key points. We need to trap those mortals back where they came from and seize the chance to take the high grounds from them. Iceheart was pushing the plans forward no matter the losses. But Mother, the enemies that launch suicidal attacks can't kill our ranks or reach this deep. Don't bother me with your duties. Protect the ranks and keep the pace. Victory is within our grasps. Iceheart brushed it off, but soon she felt the feedback of her undead thralls getting beaten by Kareem and Jax on a faster rate than before. Those two are at it again. I have to go kill them personally. As she flew out of the core magical formation, her daughter Mina was the one to stand at the center of the control formation. Mina is not Iceheart's actual biological daughter, but rather a child that was taken by force from her parents when she was but an infant, then got raised with a dozen others by Iceheart. Of course, Mina killed the other children to prove herself as the most fitting and loyal apprentice to Iceheart. An unholy cycle of mastering the undeath. Bring glory to the King of Worms, he who took us when the world rejected us and showed us power and purpose. Mina shouted. The cultists shouted after her, pouring their life energy into the control formation to give birth to more undead. Those who were not strong enough started crumbling and aging so fast as the formation ate them faster than they could maintain it. Find replacement to those faithless. We need more power to push forward. Much like her mother, Mina was cruel and unforgiving, planning to take the world down with her for the glory of the King of Worms. Lady Mina. Another cell was found dead. Suddenly, a lieutenant of hers came running to deliver the news. Damn it, what was the pattern? She asked. All are slashed cleanly in halves, and one with a broken neck. The man said, Shit, it keeps happening. Replace me. She pulled the man in her position, but for he was a knight with weak magicka, the formation consumed him in a couple of seconds. Trash. Another one. Make it stable. This formation was one large formation to control a whole army of undead. Because of the lack of resources, once the Hunding Alliance rose to power, the cult had no mortal sacrifices or young children to power it up, so they gladly gave their lives to maintain it. All the citizens of Haygoth have either fled, converted to the faith of the worm cult, or slaughtered, so it was actually a desperate situation for the worm cult as well. Yet right now, the reserve of 4,000 cultists that were bought for the maintenance and the fighting was dwindling at an alarming rate. Mina found out about the killings that started happening exactly with the start of the battle. It is safe to say, or rather unsafe, that the rear guard of the undead force is completely crippled by now for the lack of the worm cells that control the massive force of this dead army. She looked and looked, but without any leads. No matter the enemy at work here, it is as if he is walking through the shadows. Every worm cell died with blade cuts, but only one member that is usually a weaponless knight has his neck broken. Why is it being dismissed? Why does everyone think that the cult is fighting martial artists? So it is natural that we lose some members to the suicidal attacks. The dead worm cells may be not of strategic value, but losing them like that is alarming. Without them, the rear guard is moveless. Just some undead standing unless they are blocking us from retreat. Mina thought, but why would we retreat? We are winning this for sure. Who is this devil lurking among us? No way in Oblivion an enemy can be so skilled in infiltration to the point where even the Grand Anchorite is clueless of his whereabouts. Mina looked up and saw the most powerful enemy battling the Grand Anchorite up in the skies, but the Anchorite was holding well despite the enemy's action of smiting down the undead army whenever they get the chance. Can it be? As she was investigating, her eyes landed on the worm cell nearby. She watched for over 10 minutes the scene of a worm knight looking for his sword, but he can't find it, yet he stumbles upon a strange black sword that was lying on the ground carelessly. He picks the sword and falls for its bewitching beauty, then, without care, he slashes a few times with a dumb smile, killing all members of the worm cell he is leading. A moment later, a black cat-like beast passes by, and the man's head is twisted at the wrong direction. It all took a few seconds, and a whole section of the army was crippled. Yet she was unmoving, unresisting, unable to utter a word or raise a finger to point at what just happened. She was not doing this on purpose, but rather for the hand over her shoulder of a person standing on the other side of her. He wore a black cloak and resembles a cultist, but a mask was covering his face. Beautiful, isn't it? He asked, unsure of when did this man get close to her, or how was he even there made Mina speechless. Amidst the chaos of the fight, no one cared who stood beside whom, or who was who. Even in the back lines where the reinforcements were being rallied, everyone was too busy to notice anyone wearing the same color as them. As long as they are black, mostly with a green skull on the robes, that's a fellow worm cultist. But this man was not just blending in. Mina feared that if she took her eyes off him, he will disappear in the background with no way to find him again. He aimed his other hand up, and all of a sudden, the black blade that was just used to murder a whole worm cell flew right into his hand. His hand on her shoulder snuck in her hood and touched her neck, gently tickling the girl who was drenched in cold sweat. A strange crystal-like substance moved from his sleeve and came into contact with the girl's skin. Mina, my dear, I've been looking for someone like you for some time. That's a nice bond you have with your master. Master/mother, I know too damn well what such a bond means, because in my life, this is the most precious bond one have. And I know that such a bond will be the key to satisfy my blade. Sweet little Mina, it is your turn. And he put the blade into Mina's hands. Chapter 497, The Battle of Death March 7, 8, 9, and that what I call a triple threat chapter. Big thanks to our new patrons. At Snixern, D rank. At Jacob Flaherty, E rank. Part 1. The situation was seamless to foresee whose winning side is until a series of inner conflicts inside the ranks of the worm cult started to rise. The rear guard of the cult's forces were having a tough time, as it is controlling the massive reserve of reinforcements prepared for the fight, while most of the necromancers in the core formation and the vanguard were engaging in the fight. Losing the rear guard meant that most of the undead destroyed in the fight won't be replenished, and retreating will be extremely difficult. Without any prior knowledge of the two warring sides, the worm cult was already trapped into its own army. In the sky, its supreme commander was fighting the strongest member of the Alliance whose identity is mysterious, and on the ground, the supreme commander of the Alliance, Prince Kareem, was breaching the lines and slaying the cultists on alarming pace. Thus the second in command in the ranks of the cult, Necromancer Iceheart, had to step in and stop him. "You are already drained. Give up." Iceheart was as relentless as ever, aiming to weaken both Kareem and Jax, who displayed a remarkable synergy, together creating tons of corpses where they pass. Iceheart used the chance to make all those corpses explode and cause serious damage to the pair while maintaining a safe distance. Thankfully, Kareem's Paladin Aura, a spell passed down by John, was of absolute importance in this fight, as it was both healing Kareem and damaging the undead. Still, it was too overwhelming. Master, are you there?" Strangely, and amidst the chaotic clash of living flesh and dead one, a young woman in a cultist robe walked between the warring factions calling for her master. She could be seen by all, but for a strange, unexplainable reason, she was unreachable by both factions. Those who tried to walk to her felt as if the land beneath them was taking them the other way, and the young woman kept going. Despite looking like a mage, she was carrying a remarkably big sword without hindrance. It was masterfully held in a reverse grip and covered in a very breathtaking scabbard. There was no other force in play here other than this sword. No one helped Mina out along the way other than the sword that was finding its way to the closest bond of Mina wearing her skin. A devil in a shell. "Master, it is me, Mina. I came looking for you." And after some time, Mina's call was heard. "Mina, what are you doing here?" In a cinematic scene amidst the chaotic fight, a clearing was opened as bodies collided around it, leaving this place clear for 4 figures. On one side, there was a Kareem and Jax panting in exhaustion, while on the other was Iceheart, the old witch whose face was nothing but the face of a woman between life and undeath. Mina was standing in the middle of all this with a face that displayed no emotions, as if her mind went numb. Her eyes had no brightness to them, as if she was no longer there. "Mina, what have you done?" Iceheart was fast to pick up the anomaly. Jax and Kareem looked for each other, recognizing something about the blade in her hands. "Don't tell me." "What?" While Jax felt something about the situation, Kareem was worried that something very wrong might have happened. Anyway, the two, in addition to Iceheart, were in a skeptical situation regarding the sudden appearance of Mina and her unusual aura. "Why are you here, Mina?" Iceheart asked. "To be with you, Master," Mina replied very casually. Iceheart had a bad feeling about the sudden change in the situation, especially with Kareem and Jax holding back all of a sudden. "What did you come here for, Mina?" Iceheart asked again. "To help you, Master," Mina replied with quite the same attitude, creeping the creepy witch. "And why did you bring a sword, Mina?" Iceheart asked as she looked at the sword fearfully. At that point, the dumb look on Mina's face disappeared and changed into a crazed smile as she said, "To kill you, Master." In an instant, the necromancer, whose sword-swinging skill was nothing to even consider, swung a sword taller than herself very masterfully, making every sword user around the battle almost kneel and worship. The sword drew a dreadful, aiming to damn Iceheart to oblivion in one clean stroke, yet Iceheart was nothing but a cunning mage. She expected something wrong and had already an escape plan secured by a teleportation scroll that sucked her body through the void of space, but not so fast. The last speck of shadow belonging to Iceheart suddenly came to life. A portal in the shadow opened, and a hand hastily appeared, grabbing through Iceheart's teleportation runes and pulling her out from nothingness. Even the fight between Mir and Amian halted to see what was that. As Iceheart was pulled out, grabbed by her neck, she was already out of methods to run. A certain type of chain was wrapped around her body, preventing her from using magic or even making any resistance. Kill. The owner of the hand said one word, and Mina, who was holding the jet black sword, simply stabbed through Iceheart's heart. Crack, crack, break. Say what you want about nicknames. The breaking sound made by stabbing Iceheart's heart was as if a blade cutting through a piece of ice. Funny as it, no one bothered to check out what sort of a heart a dying witch had. Master, I killed you. With that stab, Iceheart had assured death unavoidable no matter what. Girl, what have you done? Mina was smiling at her master, who questioned in a desperate face what just happened. Forget about the questioning. Even Iceheart started to smile. This was unnatural. It was all unnatural. A student turning on her master, a girl turning on her mother, a smiling killer and a victim. What sort of madness was this turning out to be? Necromancy may be an evil magic that taints the soul of its user, but not every necromancer was evil. Yet this over there, this creepy situation that can't be explained by any freak of nature, a girl killing her mother. That's evil. The sword. It has got to be the sword. That's the general thought, and everyone was right. Even with news of this traveling 1,000 miles to all directions, nothing could describe the dread of this moment. Such a scene of a woman killing another, and the two falling into a hysteria of laughter, was spine-chilling. Yet no one had to wait too much for the scene to end. It was ending right away when a lifeless corpse of Iceheart slid down bent on the standing Mina, and sudden change happening. As if a blade demon, Mina charged the nearest warrior, who happened to be a worm knight, swinging that black blade at him. The man only saw a shadow moving and closed his eyes from the scare, but the coldness of a blade wound never come. As he opened his eyes, he could see the same shadow portal opening around Mina, and a man stepping out of it holding Mina with as many chains as he could. Hee. At long last. The man, who was in all ebony, held the handle of the black blade and started pulling it away from Mina, who held on to it, never letting go. You can't take me. You can't own me. You can't possess me. You are nothing. Nothing. Mina struggled to speak in a voice that is not hers. It felt like the voice of a Daedra. Those who heard the voice of a Daedra before were well aware of how such a voice sounded. Imagine a combination of metal items, forged by the fires of oblivion in its deepest depth, rattling at each other, all mixed with the most dreadful feeling one ever felt. That is the voice of a Daedric creature, a voice that brings nightmares. The man in all ebony started pulling the blade with one hand, and with the other, he was breaking Mina's bones and fingers one after the other in the most brutal way imaginable. Curse you! Curse you! Curse you! Curse you! Curse you! Curse you! Curse! The insufferable situation turned the Daedra inhabiting the blade to a tormented ghost tortured by the axe of its captor. The man in all ebony displayed mercilessness and heartlessness that made both the Alliance warriors and the worm cultists feel an equal amount of dread. Barely anyone recognized him, and those who didn't pray that he is not on the other side. Mina's fingers were all broken, and her voice was waning weaker and weaker as she cursed the man in all ebony. She was in great suffering as she was forcefully separated from the ebony blade that almost consumed her mind as the parasite it is. The blade knew what is going to happen. It was in John's hands for too long, and it wanted to break free from that madman that can resist its effect. Mina was a perfect host in all aspects. No swordsmanship, no sense of authority, young and compromised. Using her, the blade could make wonders, but instead, it fell back into John's hands. John was the worst possible wielder to the ebony blade, yet the blade suited him the best. John was a dominant person with a tyrannical aura. He represented the very aspect of control and sadistic nature. Enslaving him by the blade's whispers is merely some wishful thinking. Still, this didn't mean the blade gave up easily. It is fully awakened, now, meaning the swordsmanship skill surpassed that of John. The Ebony Blade, Daedric Artifact. Fully awakened, 10 out of 10. Absorb Vitality. Fortify swordsmanship. Forget about any blade ever forged. Arguably, this is the strongest blade in the world. John carefully controlled the blade and drove it back to its scabbard, the only known object that controls this menace of a blade. With the sword sheathed, the world could finally breathe again, literally. Iceheart was lying dead beneath John's feet as everyone heard her heart getting crushed. Actually, that was the crystal phylactery that her heart was stored inside, an initial process to those who would choose to be liches. Aside from Iceheart, Mina was squirming on the ground in a painful state. The man in all ebony looked down at her, and she looked up at him. Despite being in a chaotic state of mind, Mina recognized the man to be the source of her suffering and put all her strength to get up and catch him, but before she could, swoosh, do anything, the man pressed in her neck with the end of the scabbard breaking her throat. Mina collapsed before she could even stand and started chugging on her own blood. Vicious. Too vicious. The necromancers may be scum devoid of all humanity, but this man was treating them in a whole new level of cruelty. He wasn't even allowing them to die peacefully. High Mage, Krylin? From the sidelines, one of the warriors recognized the man in all ebony as the leader of the magic corps of the Hunding Alliance, Krylin, the man who makes all the lords agree on anything before even knowing what that was. Don't mind me. Kill them already. John's arrogance reached the sky where Mir and Amian were at. He looked up and his grin was widely seen despite the mask on his face. Mir, step aside. As the male lead, I am here to reclaim what is rightfully mine. John spoke as he appeared beside Mir at just a second. Oh, you're taking the spotlight? Mir, how did you know? John, you never shut up about. Mir, good answer. John. Part 2. The Ebony Blade, so is you all along. The Laborer of Azura. Grand Anchorite Amian recognized John's identity from the blade. Yes, so it was Krylin of the Hunding Alliance. We heard about you. You destroyed our partners in Morrowind and caused a lot of ruckus to the cult wherever you went. Today is your day of reckoning, mortal. Amian fervently screamed. Piss off, mosquito. John flipped the bird. Take this. Amian was still in a sound mind as he cast a powerful spell toward John. It was a soul-absorbing spell that would damage both the living and the dead, known as Bitter Harvest. John wasn't as skilled in necromancy as Amian, the ancient vampire, but John was well aware of the runic structure of the spell. In a second, he devised a counterspell that dispels every form Amian spell and used it as a shield. Amian caught up to John's trick that would render him open for counterattacks and redirected his spell immediately. Sly bastard. John clicked his tongue and watched how the spell curved, then descended on the ground between the warring sides. He wants to use the corpses on the ground to empower himself. Mir alerted John as he saw Amian use this spell once. Ha! Dog of Azura, you will never defeat me. Amian was pulling back away, trying to gain as much power as he could. Trap him, John said. On it. Mir hastily reacted and swung the Ansei ward. He has many times launching a barrage of blades. Amian evaded as many attacks as he could, but he was bound to be hit in the end. Despite the injury, Amian was still active and regenerated almost immediately, but that was what John needed to launch his attacks. He was just right beside Amian, and before the latter notices it, the head of pride was deep in his guts. Clench your teeth. John cast Thunder Cookie from the head of his staff at point blank. The sudden strike was so terrifying that it blasted away Amian with a big hole in his torso. Amian crashed down in the ground amidst his forces. Before he could even stand up, John struck once again from the sky. Seeing how many undead there are around Amian, John turned the poison on its maker and cast Corpse Explosion on all the fallen undead. Boom, 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 boom. Nothing was left in its place once John started attacking. He even tasked Nefertiti to roam the battlefield undetected and disintegrate any fallen corpse into dust. As his moves were done, John waved the staff, dusting off the aftermath cloud, blocking his view. There, Amien's body was in a devastating condition, yet still bringing itself all together. Damn you! Amien was looking at John with a deep grudge swelling up at his chest. John is simply destroying everything. It wasn't hard to imagine that John was hiding himself to sabotage the cult's force from the shadows, ultimately taking down most of the rearguard and crushing Necromancer Iceheart with a dirty move. Amien figured that out at least. My lord, Lord Mannimarco, he is coming. You may think that you are winning, but you will never win. I alone can hold you here. I won't fall no matter what. I am immortal. Fuck you. John used his staff as a javelin while casting a spell and throwing it at the same time. Pride pinned Amien by his thigh, and the spell on it exploded. It was the EMP spell, the electromagic pulse that renders all the other spells and magical effects useless. It burns. It burns. Amien was shivering on the ground, wailing from the pain. It wasn't just because of John's attack, but also because of the effect of the EMP spell. As an anti-magic spell, this spell caused the soul snare magic and the sunscreen magic used by the vampires to dispel for just a moment, delivering a massive amount of damage to Amien. The vampire bore his fangs and kept screaming as the undead around him were falling one after the other. Hell, he couldn't even move Pride a single bit. The staff itself lashed at him once he tried to use it. Know your place, undead. This staff is only meant for one man. John pulled Pride back as he hovered in the sky above Amien. Amien crawled with his burnt body as it started regenerating again and again. John simply turned Amien from an opponent into a training dummy. With his vast amount of magicka, maintaining Amien down and maximizing his pain while keeping his magicka reserve into consideration is a piece of cake. Why you? Monster! Amien spat out as he screamed. What? John questioned again. I said you are a monster. Don't you ever think that you are a hero. You will be hated as much as us. You are cruel, unforgiving, just like us. They will turn on you, resist you, and break you. Monster! Oh, you were saying I am a monster? Sorry, mate. I'm quite far up here. You have to say what you said again. He. John's bad habit of being the sadistic partner in any sort of relationship was quite impressive. Monster or not, he didn't care anyway. He just didn't like the worm cult at all to begin with. They ruined all his fantasies about being a necromancer in secret. They're nothing like Nurina, who takes it as a field of study, not a way of worship. The Lord, he will come. Yes, heard it. He will come for me. Whatever, dude. And he will avenge me. For eyes. I am who made a shell, ha. I molded him a new vessel. The child of agony. I, the creator of the Lord's vessel. This moment, John stopped his act and kept listening. The Lord, when he comes. No, not that part. Tell me about the vessel. You're talking of Zane. John had to redirect the conversation. Zane? Ha. You're his friend? What about it? Just a mortal. A very lucky mortal. I turned him, gave him my blood. He carried the darkness of the void in agony. Amien said, trying to anger John more. No, you planted the darkness into him. You cursed him with what he hates the most. John said, you know that much? Indeed, we did. He was laboring for a Daedric prince, but he was the promised one to us. He bore 2 curses. One from the void, one from the blood. He is the greatest thing ever existed, and that is merely the requirement to be the vessel of the Lord. I see. So Mannimarco reincarnates into Zane's body, and that's it? No master plan? What are you talking about? The Lord, he will conquer all the world, the crimson ship. Boring. Conquer the world my ass. That doesn't even benefit him. If he wants something, then it is more death, to trap more souls into the soul snare spell. I am aware that you are buying time to fix the soul snare spell, but that's already too late. I know everything I need. John positioned himself above Amien, then canceled the flight magic falling directly at Amien. It wasn't much to be said afterwards. John's but completely crushed Amien's head. Ouch, that hurts. John stood up after crushing Amien beneath him. He rubbed his butt lightly and stretched his back. What was that for? Mir came down as well, standing beside John. Don't worry, he is dead, John said. Dead? No. You see how he keeps coming back? He is. Believe me, if you kill an undead with your butt, it is game over. Finito. I don't understand. There is no physical evidence that killing an undead with your but won't make them come back. Ag. Mir was refusing John's claims, but the latter kept poking Amien's body with his staff. See? No reaction. John said. Mir looked deeply at Amien, but the latter wasn't regenerating at all. Of course, it is a good thing, but he couldn't buy it until some parts of Amien started to harden and show cracks. Vampires have that strange physiology where they become very dry upon death, turning in the end into vampire dust, a very rare alchemy component. He is really dead. Mir was still having a hard time believing it. Come on, show some trust over here. A butt attack is a bane to all evil. No, it isn't. Try butting one of those undead. It won't work. Oomph. As stubborn as Mirren and as realistic as Miranda indeed. John ignored him and observed the ongoing battle. The fight has escalated further from the main battlefield, but by now, everyone must know about the fall of Amien. The cult will fall back, but their rear guard won't budge as no one is controlling it. To describe what happened next is to describe a slaughter. Not only the Alliance and the Citadel that attacked the cult, but lo and behold, the cavalry have arrived as well. General Kasha, King Abbas, the 7th Legion, and the army of Sentinel. One order was on everyone's mind: take no prisoners. Part 3. To think that you would arrive this late? Isha said, while washing her face from a copper basin. I had things to take care of. Also, I've done my part. John replied, giving his back to her. As she finished taking care of the cuts on her face, she turned around and stood beside John. In front of the two was a large bed with a golden aura surrounding it. Around the bed were most of the important figures of the Citadel of Ebonarm, the Hunding Alliance, the 7th Legion, and the Court of Sentinel. However, on the bed was a masked woman in a state worse than anyone could have imagined. They say she suffered over 100 wound. Isha said, I know. Most of her wounds are already infected as well. It's a miracle she didn't bleed to death. John said, Lord Krylin, it is of absolute importance that Lady Layla be present in battle. She held the lines for almost 4 hours on her own. She is a major inspirational effect for the soldiers. Is there no spell or ritual to heal? There is no point in healing. To whoever spoke earlier, John cut him short. After a certain degree, the body doesn't respond to healing. This is not about the magic ability, but about the blueprint of the body itself, the astral form. When it fades so much after overexhausting oneself, it is almost impossible to heal unless it recovers on its own. All the ones present in the room remained respectfully silent until John finished his words. However, the one who asked was still not sure of what John was talking about. Forgetting that he was talking to a bunch of warriors, John adjusted his speech. She exhausted her soul. Healing needs the soul to rebuild the body on it as a base. Does this mean? No, she is not dying, but she may never wake up if her soul doesn't recover on its own. Ultimately dying. She needs your prayers. John said those words and walked out, followed by most of the lords. Lord Krylin, the plan to attack. Lord Krylin, the thing about distributing. Lord Krylin, we need to discuss. John looked back at the people following him, and they all went silent. The fight is tomorrow before first light. Get some rest, gentlemen. We will hold a meeting during the march. Ultimately, after the big show of his power, John was seen as the #1 figure of the whole alliance. Someone like the King of Sentinel can't be simply ordered around by the small prince of Strozmkai, making John the supreme commander by default. Still, he left it all to Kareem and went to brood over the sunfall alone. A cold wind passed by him in that state, making him smile faintly. That's a whiff from Skyrim. Indeed. How I miss her. Looking at the back, it was General Kasha. Can we talk? Leave me be, woman. I'm your goddamn aunt. This, her that. She walked beside him and pointed for his mask to remove it. He gave a long sigh before taking it away and turning to her. How can I be of service? John ever so patiently asked. What brought you out of Skyrim? She asked. I'm banished, he said. You are, for all I can think about. You could have banished that little king of your country on your own and replaced him. The tales about how you fought today. You are more of a monster than any fireman I know. She said, You don't know me. No, I don't. Still, seeing them all caring about the war chief of the Citadel is strange. Aren't you the hero of the day? She asked. How sly of you, trying to turn me on them, woman. No, of course not. Listen, I'm not a hero. The war chief is. The damn woman fought on her own, blocking a whole wing for the forces to retreat for hours. I just came and ended things. You think I'm a symbol? If you Imperials know of me, you know I hate wars. In a war, I'd rather be the symbol of fear rather than the symbol of hope. Fear ends wars. Hope drags them on. John bluntly spoke out his philosophy to an Imperial general. Sigh, I had enough of you firemen's for one lifetime, and now you. Perfect. Kasha couldn't help but sigh. John remained silent, but he laughed at the end. So, what do you want? He asked. The Emperor is interested in your movements. You keep making trouble for His Imperial Majesty, and the Ancestor Moth cult is trying to track you with all their efforts. I'm not free to play politics with you Imperials. You're so slow at understanding things. Really, I just told you I want to be alone. See that King of Sentinel and those Redguard lords? They understood it right away and took their distance. You Imperials ain't that bright after all. If this was a social talk, I would have stayed away. I know it isn't a social talk. Why do you think I want to be left alone? You know, you are more of an asshole than your Uncle Blader, she said. Come on, he's nice. He is just too shy to show it. John laughed. Anyway, I came for you to inquire about your movements for the coming period. The Imperial Court is insisting to keep you monitored. Well, I'll be spending some time roaming the continent and maybe Oblivion until mid-year 201. I'll go home after that. Kasha narrowed her eyes, not buying what John just said. A problem? He asked. A powerhouse like you should have a fixed post. You can hardly be considered a normal citizen of the Empire, and as you know, the Empire doesn't want to house potential traitors. Wow, big words. For a powerhouse. I am still young and inexperienced. I want to travel the world and try things. Young? Inexperienced? Your name comes up in the Imperial Court, and the best officials try to skip the damn meeting. Huh, I'm just conveying what I was told. Listen, John, show some loyalty to your nation. The Empire will always be behind you if you prove your goodwill. My goodwill? My goodwill has been proven over and over again. As I said, the Imperials are just too stupid and narrow-minded to see things right. I have favored your cause. I didn't join hands with Ulfric. I killed every Thalmor dog whenever I come across one. I became the champion of your arena, hailing the Emperor's name. I support each and every action taken by the Empire against its enemies. But Jarl Ulfric Stormcold. Yet the least courtesy you damn faithless Imperials can spare me is not to keep asking me to aim my blade at a brother Nord. John's tension was clear at this moment. We just want fewer casualties. That could be arranged. Winterhold is not involved. It is a safe haven, a piece of frozen wasteland to the north with a non-aggression pact to all parties. Those who enter it are safe. Those who wage war already know what they are messing with. General, if the war machine of Winterhold entered the battle me on its lead, what do you think the outcome will be? The mere thought of Winterhold going to war was already experimented on an army of 10,000 Nords with their voice masters combined with 4,000 Dominion soldiers and 10 archwizards. The Battle of Winterhold, the Battle of Forsworn John Dare, the Clash of Blood Sails, and the Firemans. These three events are all under the belt of Winterhold and John Dare. Add to that the things that went under the record, such as today's battle. It is already easy to imagine John Dare, being the shadow king of a nation called Winterhold. The imperial court can't let such a thing go uncontrolled, but what can be done? Each era, there are remarkable heroes that rise to change the world and affect the very core of politics. John Dare is certainly such a person, and his name was already recorded by many as a person of a great impact on the political situation during the Fourth Era. Such a feat is enough to make the 19-year-old John Dare be proud for the rest of his life. The shadow of such a great young man can cover an entire nation, such as Skyrim, and may one day cover the Empire as well. That's what the others think, not what John thinks. So, what do you want to tell the Imperial Court, Viscount John? Cassia took out a paper and a quill demanding an official statement from John that goes directly to the Emperor's court. Tell them, you motherfuckers has more things to worry about than me. Haven't I told you about him dragons? It was a long day, afternoon, and sunset. John laid down beside a bonfire, resting his on Ela's lap. I'm glad you joined us, girl. Yeah, I miss your boy anyway. Seeing the two lovebirds commence a strange ritual of bringing their heads closer and rubbing their noses together, Isha lashed out immediately. You two go get a room, she said, throwing a water skin at John and Ela. Says the one who takes the poor boy into a bush. John threw it back at her. Asterisk, sob asterisk, my dearest Mirren, if you still hear me, come out already. Don't worry, I'm still faithful to you, my cute honey boo. Isha hugged Mir and started rubbing her face at his shoulder right away. I don't think it is time. Mir tried to say something for herself, but John lashed out this time. Hey, I get a 50% share in that. He said, you got your girl. Leave them to me. Isha carried Mir away by herself. Wait. John was about to chase her, but Ela pulled him down by force. You're still sweet on that elf, Firemane boy. Ela's stare was cold. Come on, girl, don't be this naive. You know I take care of my family. Come here. Normally, the night before the big battle requires a lot of preparation and planning, but no one even expected to reach this far against the worm cult other than John and his team. From now on, it will solely rely on John spearheading the attack with 4 armies supporting him. For sure, it was a lot of pressure, but now, the armies are gathered at the edge of the desert near a small farm after camping around an abandoned town with freshwater sources and a good strategic position. From far, they should be able to see the city of Hagov, but ever since it was taken by the worm cult, the city didn't put on that much light, so it was impossible to see anything before dawn. May the sun of tomorrow be the most gentle sun ever warmed the world. Not too far from the camp, a voice was heard praying. It was none other than the moth priest Kellen and his friend Nag. You two are here? Haven't I let you go? John said, I remember that Lord Krylin has promised us a certain prize if we did a certain service for him. Kellen said, Nag thinks that Lord Krylin is a generous person and powerful. This one still thinks we can just go. Nag seemed to be reluctant about the matter they are after. It was only natural for they were asking John to give them an Elder Scroll. I see. Here. Without much saying, John flicked his fingers and the Elder Scroll, forgotten, appeared. By a smear, Ela saw the scroll, and all her senses felt as if they were cheating her. You are giving them your scroll? No, that's another one. John replied. You had another one. Picked it up the other day. It was this guy's anyway. John said, casually tossing the scroll to Kellen. Leave a good word for me with your elders. Last time, I think I left the Ancestor Moth cult running in circles. John's intentions were clear. The cult of the Ancestor Moth has a lot of influence in the Imperial Court. Once he is good to them, no one from the Imperial Court will mess with him anyway. It is strange that even after his retirement, they are still bothered by his actions and opinions. It was easy to understand. The House of Dare is basically the ruling faction of Winterhold and the unification of the Firemans and the Moonblades, a power that can't be commanded around except by John Dare. Also, it was clear that by Cash's existence, the identity of Krylin is soon about to be exposed to the world. It was all right anyway. The need for those many identities has finally come to an end. What separates John Dare from Skyrim is only one last fight. Chapter 498, The Battle of Death March 10:11. Okay, folks, I'm aiming to finish the volume at chapter 500. This is a double trouble chapter. Also, the first 10 chapters of The Villainous Returns with a System are now free on P4Tray0N. The novel is a RSDUM spin-off. Now, big flipping thanks to the new patrons. At Jorgosnia, D rank. At M.A.K.H. D rank. It is dawn, let's move out. Yeah, let's get ready. Today was the day. The 20th of Rain's Hand, April, for E200. In the Red Guard holiday calendar, this is the day of shame when the Red Guards refused to take in the refugees of the Kothringi who were dying to the Nahitan flu. It is believed that the ship's returns on the day of shame, so the people of Hammerfell would lock their doors that day, yet who would have thought that the Worm Cult is the one summoning the Crimson Ship to Haygoth? That's why a major countermeasure had to be taken, and that's none other than the Ansei Wards. The Ansei Wards are the sole swords of 3 sword saints who battled necromancy during the First Era. These sword saints, who are Maja, Raiden, and Halila, made a pact with an original spirit worshipped by the Red Guards known as Tuwaka, and thus dedicated their soul swords to ward off evil. The Ansei Ward's purpose was rather defensive, not offensive. The reason why Mir and Karim could wield those swords was thanks to the fact that one is an Elnafi while the other is a descendant of a hero and wielding the soul sword of Prince Ader. Jon would be able to wield the Ansei Ward he is entrusted with by exploiting the power of the Ebony Blade that fortifies the swordsmanship skill as much as the blade is awakened. Now that the Ebony Blade is fully awakened, Jon could display a great skill with the sword. Are the 3 of you ready? Beth asked Jon, Karim, and Mir. Yes. Then the champion shall open a portal, please. Jon took out Pride and cast his magic, opening a gateway through space to a certain place the 3 are heading to. Once they passed the portal, they were in front of the Ansei Pyramid. It is here where my 7th labor began. Jon said. Took you long enough. Beth replied. Indeed, it is the most unpleasant labor so far. He said. Wasn't the 2nd more unpleasant? You lost parts of your body. The 2nd was necessary, and if the damage befalls on me alone, I am to endure. But this a whole nation is suffering. Jon's mood was heavier than usual this morning, thus Beth decided to lead the road forward and divert the subject. So, which labor did you enjoy? She asked. The first was all right. I met Isha and became a relative to Uncle Shio. The 3rd was satisfying. Despite being injured, I have managed to escape Lord Harkon and meet Serana, as well as create Pride and enslave Zykiel. The 6th is my personal favorite. Meeting the old woman of Mournhold was a refreshing change of events, and I quite like Morrowind. Jon said. I like Morrowind as well. Mir butted in. I've got to meet the loves of my life there. I as Miranda had quite the awkward meeting with Jon, but I as Mirren had a lot of naughty time with Isha. How I love the 2 of you, Chem. What? Why are you? Bruh, you're having an identity crisis. Jon, and I am supposed to be a minor here. Beth. These are some serious things I heard just now. Karim. The group light-heartedly entered the Ansei Pyramid and reached the innermost chamber at the Gates of Wish. There, an altar was seen in the middle of the room. What now? Jon asked. We renew the pact with Tuwaka, Karim said as he followed the instructions of Prince Ader. The 3 Ansei holders put the blades beside each other on the altar and waited as Karim was preparing. You have a plan for the fight? Beth asked. We will finish here, then head directly to Haygoth before the Alliance reaches it. Once we are there, we will take a certain spot each and use the Ansei Wards to make a barrier that will isolate Haygoth from the rest of Hammerfell. According to the spell I modified, this will counterattack the Soul Snare spell and limit it to only Haygoth. There, Manamarco will have no place to run to, and we will strike him once he reincarnates in Zane's body. So you're not going to look for that thing from my vision? She asked. That thing? Jon frowned. I told you before, the one that will kill Zane is none of us. I saw a young man fighting him in the desert, and he is the one that will put him down for good. Beth insisted on her vision. And I remember you divining for that young man with no results. John replied, Yes, I could find him, but he must be out there. If he is not a day away from us, then we shouldn't bother with that vision. John dismissed her vision and patted her head. Beth was used to John taking her visions seriously and overanalyzing them, especially the ones from the past. The future is a bit unfixed, but she can still get a thing or two right. John's current reaction was upsetting Beth, yet she remained silent. It was better to look for that person on her own. I'm done. The ritual will start. Gather around. At that time, Kareem called for John and Mir to join him at the altar. Should I power the pyramid now? John asked. Yes, please. Without much effort, John sent out both pride and lust out of the pyramid to its top. The moonlight energy was required to power the pyramid, so lust would act as a catalyst hole, pride do the energy gathering work. Soon, the valley of the Anseh pyramid started to vibrate, and the connection was established. Far to the west, the city of Hagoth stood tall, reeking with the smell of blood and corpses. If John saw that, then he may doubt that his reincarnation into Skyrim took the wrong turn to Diablo. The scene of the city was just brutal. The scouting force was led by one of the strongest individuals of the Hunding Alliance, the war chief of the Citadel of Ebenarm. She personally led the way with a patch of battle lords to a high ground near Hagoth overlooking the city. One of the famous things about the war chief was her mask, a golden mask made into the shape of a beast. A few know why she wears a mask, but no one really wanted to butt into her business. Anyway, after hiding the horses in a safe place, the group advanced on foot until they reached a good spot to see the city from. There, the war chief removed her mask. Under the mask, the face of a red-guard young woman appeared, and that was by no means War Chief Layla. The followers behind her seemed aware of the fact that Isha was the one wearing the mask. Last night, War Chief Layla passed away due to her injuries, but the news was held to not affect the morale. After all, War Chief Layla was the symbol of bravery in the Alliance. Right now, someone had to bear the burden of being the source of inspiration, and that was none other than Isha. She was strong and brave enough to resemble the war chief in every way. The person in question herself took it as a duty to put on that mask, especially after seeing the face of the war chief for the first time. War Chief Layla passed on her will and her mask to Isha before taking her last breath. Anyway, she took the duty of scouting ahead with some trusted battle lords to get a clear picture of the situation and the enemy defenses. What they saw was oblivion. Hagoth itself was a very fortified city that withstood the Great War and fully stopped the advance of the Almorai Dominion. Still, in front of them right now was a tragedy. Gargoyles circled the morning skies, carrying human limbs by their fangs. Spikes were put in the city's rooftops, each one with a head on it linked to the other spikes with the entrails of those poor souls. Once the gargoyles left, the people started running out of their homes to scrap what was left in the markets. Sometime later, the cultists would appear in the city, chasing the locals out of their way with whips and spears. A girl was captured and taken by the cultists, while people were pulling away the girl's mother, who was about to throw herself on the spears of those cultists. In another part of the town, a group of locals was trying to ambush some cultists, but it ended up in a chaotic fight. Once the locals escaped down the sewers, the cultists started flooding the place with undead. Horrific as it was, none of this was relevant. The most important thing right now is the mission in hand, and that was to locate the targeted locations according to John's plan. John made clear and blunt in the War Council. A siege and an open battle are a waste of time. He even admired that he is not good at leading armies, but he has the best tactic to win: a full charge into the city. The powerhouses and the mages will be the vanguard, surprising the worm cult in Hagoth and blowing away the city gate. The armies will swarm and join hands with the local resistance. No matter what, fights shouldn't take too long, and the Alliance must break into small teams to cover every street and neighborhood in and out of Hagoth. The main objective is called Search and Destroy. Search for any trace of the cult and destroy it without asking questions with extreme firepower. Teleportation spells were a hurdle to cast on a massive scale thanks to the Soul Snare spell cast on Hammerfell. So the first objective was to triangulate the location of the spell and mark it, then decide 3 spots. Once that was over, Isha's next mission was to find the perfect places to position the siege weapons on. Once all of it is over, it would be good to try and get any information on Zane or Zara if possible. Zara, Zane's window, was kidnapped by the cult for a reason unknown, and whatever they are trying to do with her, John speculated it to be related to hastening Mana Marco's incarnation in Zane's body. Still, it was impossible to find Zane out in the open, or even Zara. Isha had to stay still waiting for the Alliance to arrive. Sharpening her spear was the only sound giving her solace that vengeance is near. Only she can grant her brother the bitter mercy. Part 2. The Worm Cult has sent most of its forces in Haygoth to battle the alliance of the Redguard Lords that started from Strozmkai. The fact that the cult has lost many strongholds in that short amount of time was not making any sense to the top brass of the cult. Thus the Grand Anchorite decided to take things into his own hands, gathering the biggest undead army ever moved in the Fourth Era, and decided to wipe out the Alliance, pushing them back to the Alakar Desert. The undead army marched 3 days ago. Then they received the news that the Alliance was prepared for them, yet the undead army was too large to lose anytime soon. By the time the battle concludes, the reincarnation of the King of Worms should have already taken place. But the news of the defeat of the army of the dead has never reached Haygoth. John has personally made sure of it. He wanted to surprise the cult and hit where it hurts, ultimately not leaving them any chance to survive or even escape. With Isha doing the recon, while the alliance of 40,000 soldiers swiftly advancing and the 3 Ansei wards are being activated, the attack on Haygoth will be decisive. The alliance now has all the advantages it needs. 3 figures stood around the altar under the Ansei pyramid, each of them holding an Ansei ward blade up. John was holding his blade up with a hand on the ebony blade, while Kareem did the same with his soul sword. Mir didn't need to borrow any kind of power, so the 3 were all ready to begin. Away from them, Beth was carrying Nefertiti between her arms as the 2 watched over the ritual. The 3 Ansei holders started making the pact, and a blinding golden aura enveloped them as they underwent some sort of interview with the 3 sword saints. Homan is glowing, Nefertiti said. He is doing well. Beth asked. Yeah, his mood is great. You seem a bit down these past few days. HM? Yes, Homan and I are starting to feel homesick. You too miss Skyrim? Every day. Nefertiti transformed from BER cat form to a human form and sat aside. Tell me about Winterhold, Beth asked. It is cold, but it is home. It is fun every day. There is everyone. Alina, the crazy elf, Homan Mother's hammer boy. You will go back after the labors? Homan will decide. Can I come? Homan will decide. When this is over, I will have to go back to Bothia's cult. It is boring. I guess so. When I asked the champion to take me as a student, he said I must prove myself. Any idea how? Probably something has to do with magic. The 2 girls were talking without much energy. The past few days were fun for them, but now, the 2 realized it will come to an end after tomorrow. John, Isha, Mirren, and Miranda weren't planning to stay in Hammerfell after this anymore. As for Beth, whose actual name is Bothia, she was in a tough situation herself. Whether to abandon the cult of Bothia and take her path after John, or to serve Bothia for the rest of her life. Actually, when John told her to prove herself, she already knew how, but there's a lot on stake here. As the 2 talked, the 3 were finishing up the preparation to awaken the wards. John, Kareem, and Mir walked away from the altar with their bodies glowing from the presence of the sword saints they are carrying at the moment. We better hurry. Kareem was worried about the situation with the Alliance. Patience. It is still not time to show ourselves. Mir was rather calm. Let's move according to the plan. Each of us will cover a certain place. After the sword formation is complete, then and only then we will move. John had to be strict about following the plan. The three were about to play the biggest strategic role in the final battle right now. The tension was as high as it can get. John was using pride for the sole sake of communication and managed to receive feedback on what the Alliance and the cult were up to, as well as the current state of affairs in Haygoth. To put it down frankly, John wasn't letting anything to be left to chance. All right, we're moving. Once it was all clear, John gave the green light. I'm on it. Mir took Kareem, tore a portal in space with the Ansei ward and passed through it. Nefertiti took Beth into the shadow world and followed after John, who teleported near Isha's location. Under the gray sky of this dim morning, John walked quietly beside Isha. All clear. Yes, the army is behind that hill. The roads were cut to Haygoth. The cult isn't aware of anything. Good, I'm moving in. Don't think of it and just charge ahead. The gate will open on its own. All right, and John, good luck. To you too, Isha. John disappeared from his place and appeared in another place alongside Mir and Kareem. All set? Kareem asked. Yes. Let's get right to it. I will take the northern tower. Mir will take the southern tower. Kareem will take the lighthouse. John divided the positions, and the three nodded to each other. From their hiding spot behind a large rock, the three darted out running as fast as they could towards Haygoth. Say what you want about running. Their two were in a state where they were moving faster than any living being. One step of them would pass 10 meters on the sand without any noise. In a matter of a few seconds, Mir was hiding under the city wall's tower to the south, while John and Kareem were hiding under the northern tower. Steady. Go. Oh. In a second, Mir and John jumped up the wall, holding onto the first arrow slits they came across. With another jump, Mir reached to another while John found a window. One more jump, and the two reached the top of each tower. Kareem followed after John and reached at the same time he did. You are adapting well. Thanks. Now off with you. John didn't Kareem much time to take his breath, and Kareem found himself being held by John and tossed across the city wall to the west. It was all according to plan, so he didn't complain. The cultists may have been guarding those walls and towers, but the three Ansei holders were too fast to even retaliate against. John and the other two made sure to kill only when they needed to not raise attention. Meanwhile, Kareem landed halfway across the wall and started running on it until he could go west no longer. With a confident jump, he directly left the tower and landed in the streets. There was no time to play stealthy at this point. As far as he is concerned, the city is already too chaotic to care about him. Death was lurking everywhere. The monsters conjured by the cult were all over the place. Some were even feeding on people in broad daylight. The citizens were too scared to come out, and some places were already transforming into entertainment hubs for the cultists, such as corpse stores and slave markets. Everything was just desperate and sad save for the evil smile of the cultists. Too distracted, too unaware, Kareem was already at the lighthouse. I'm there, hello. Krylin. Oh, I hear you. The soul snare, spell formation is jamming the signal. Star now. Oh, it was now. The time to start the final battle starts with those three. Sword formation. The line between the three Ansei words was fully activated. John on the northern tower, Mir on the southern tower, and Kareem on the western lighthouse all had their Ansei wards glowing brilliantly. It was as if three suns were rising on three different locations around the city. The holy aura coming from those three locations greatly altered the cultists. Soul imprint, sun prison. Once the link was stable, a triangle of light was formed around Haygoth with an Ansei holder on each angle. With the triangle appearing in plain sight, it started to draw a wall around Haygoth. Three walls of light appeared brightly around the old city and started clashing with the soul snare formation. The magicka between Aetherius and Nirn became agitated, and magicka anomalies started to form and attack John and the others. These anomalies were but spheres of light representing the will of the world, being provoked by the strong individuals doing acts against Aetherius. Move, move, move. Check those towers. Someone is bound to be up there. The cultists started to react based on what they saw, and clearly, the Ansei holders were now visible in plain sight. Jean sent out Nefertiti to protect the mirror and Pride to protect himself while his soul sword protected Kareem. Release. The sword formation was finally released, and its brilliance started to overtake the soul snare formation. Outside Hagav, Isha wore the mask of the war chief once again and rode her horse leading the battle lords down the hill. There, she met the vanguard of the Hunding alliance advancing towards Hagav. She raised her spear and stood on the saddle, making all the riders in the front be driven by the hype of following the war chief into the final battle into Hagav. Brothers and sisters, that is Hagav. Hagav is Hammerfell, the first city of Redguards. That is Deathland, and it is filled with undeath. What you're about to see is beyond atrocities and war crimes. It is evil in its darkest and vilest form. Ride with me and stab that evil in the heart. Redguards, Yeowa Yeowa. Isha didn't do much of calling and shouting in the past, but now she felt it was necessary. Once she turned around and rode towards Hagav at the top speed of her horse, she felt the weight of 40,000 Redguards riding behind her. The army of her kinsmen blocked the view and brought the sandstorm behind it. It was a glorious scene, but the glory had more glory added to it. Further in Hagav, once the sword formation was fully established and a triangular wall trapped the city from all sides, a massive change happened. The soul snare formation was fixed in Hagav. It started to clash with the sword formation, but the latter was much stronger regarding its offensive formation. Soon enough, the gray sky above Hammerfell started to change their color from gray to ashen bright to pale to sky blue. Isha was gazing at the sky that she almost forgot its color as her horse rode forward, and her breath was all taken in. "How I missed that," she uttered. Ultimately, all the army behind her felt the same, but once they realized that the evil in Hagav was isolated by the walls of light, they all realized what sort of fight they will have ahead. The evil is trapped, and now that the sky is blue once again, this is extermination. The blood of the Redguards boiled and forgot about everything other than their fight and the plan. The mages started to position themselves outside Hagav and activate the marks left by Isha. Now that the soul snare was down, teleporting stuff was very easy, and those marks were made for just that. The void in space started distorting at every location, and large constructs started to appear. These were war trebuchets. The large siege engines were prepared last night at haste and marked for teleportation by the mages for this exact moment. Once they appeared, they were already ready to fire. A barrage of stone and rocks landed on the main gate of Hagav, and the land shook. The gate was no more, and a cloud of dust blocked the sight. With the thundering shouts of 40,000 soldiers swarming through, the cultists near the wall were the first to see a charging black horse coming through the cloud with a rider aiming her spear to claim their lives. The death march was coming to an end. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 499, The Battle of Death March, 12, 13, 14, 15. I said on P4TRE0N that this is the largest chapter one ever wrote, 6K words, but that's wrong. Chapter 500 is way larger, and it is available on P4TRE0N in an hour for free button, FRE, free button. My birthday special event party popper balloon birthday cake. Happy birthday to me birthday cake balloon party popper 22nd of January. That's why this is a wholesome, foursome chapter. My birthday is synced with the game start volume. I'm not sure how it happened, but I didn't plan for it, so thank you God for the assist. Part 1. There was not much to tell about the plan of the Hunding Alliance. It was wait for the isolation magic, rush at the gates, kill the cultists. Simple and smooth. John, Mir, and Kareem sat this sword formation, Sun Prison, a magic formation used by the sword saints of old to isolate the evil powers from spreading and thriving, and, as the legend stated, that spell delivered. Once that was done, the gates were brought down by the trebuchets that were summoned after the disappearance of the soul snare formation. The cloud of dust that was caused by the bombardment covered a great deal of the 40,000 men that were overtaking Haygoth from all directions. The first thing the cultists could see was the shadow of Ryder breaking through the dust and aiming her spear the nearest of them. Under the mask of the war chief, Isha was delivering the first strike. 3 spots were open the wall of Haygoth, 1 at the gatehouse and 2 at a couple of weak points in the defenses that were aimed at beforehand. Before the attack would even arrive, the cultists were restless as the sword formation, Sun Prison, was cast around the city and isolated the soul snare formation only in Haygoth. This only meant that, by some absurd means, the enemies have arrived. As most of the cultists in Haygoth started rushing at the 3 points where the Ansei wards are, the bombardment happened and the city was breached. From an upper point of view, the Alliance stormed through the 3 openings and the cultists weren't even prepared. At that point, any army would lose its advantages as there was no way to move freely in a city, so the guerrilla warfare tactics laid by John started to be vital for the next phase of the plan. Secure the plaza. Spread into teams. Search every street and alleyway. Search every house and gather the citizens into the flagged areas. Any cultist in your way is to be killed. As the captain started conveying the orders were soon executed in reality. The whole alliance started splitting under the commanders of hundreds, charging through every possible street and alleyway from every possible direction. The screams and wails of the necromancers that were overwhelmed by the speed of the alliance warriors started filling the skies of Haygoth. The houses that housed citizens were broken into, and the people were ordered out for inspection. The houses that were found housing cultists were dealt with according to the regulations. Half of the city was being covered in mere minutes. "Rebort," John called. "Hiya." "Die." Isha was immersed in killing and barely found an opportunity to reply. Half of the city is almost covered. Some cultists are escaping to the docks at the west with hostages. They're mine. Any sign of the main objective? Oh, I think I can sense the source of it, but there is no sign of Zane or Zara. Damn it. Be calm. We are moving now. Oh. John ended the transmission, and Isha whirled her spear above her head, then destroyed all manners of undead surrounding her. War Chief. A squadron of cultists in the coming plaza. They outnumber us. A warrior came running to her. Huh. Send a signal. She laughed it off and gave a terrifying order. John didn't only come up with a plan that can work inside a city, but even with methods to solve any problem that might stop the advance of the troops. The signal Isha ordered was such a thing. The warrior took a certain arrow and notched it, letting it fly towards that plaza. Once the arrow landed, it started emitting a red beam to the sky. Back outside the city, the siege engineers saw what they were aiming for. Adjust the angle. 23 points west, then 5 points south. Burn the fuse. Fire. The catapults switched from throwing rocks and stones to throwing barrels of flammables. Not much to be described afterward. The barrels landed on the plaza, and hell broke loose on whoever was unfortunate enough to be there. Good hit. Mages, open us a way. Isha was satisfied with the result and ordered the mages in her squad to put down the fire as they advanced through the plaza to the other streets. A few minutes earlier, the 3 Ansei holders were preparing to act. The formation requires us to stay connected with the Ansei wards. Listen well, once we figure out where the formation runes are, we will strike at once. Oh, MHM. Understood. Homan found it. Meanwhile, Nefertiti appeared in her beast form. Pinpoint it. There. Ja maintained control over his Ansei ward and looked towards where she was pointing while casting far vision. There was a certain in the city where the landed was holed and a tunnel was opened in the ground. Through the tunnel, there was a ton of undead and cultists holding many hostages. Beyond them was an open space where a large runic circle was drawn and a ton of black soul gems was hoarded. Shit, that's way too much. The soul snare spell was a true menace. It was a spell capable of harvesting souls and keeping those souls to power itself more. The modifications added by the cultists were making this formation interfere with soul and magicka to seal both space magic and mind waves from leaking. Thus, it was impossible to teleport right to the formation and destroy it. Also, a lich was protecting it. John needed to personally move to get rid of it. As John was thinking of a method to reach it, Isha was moving forward and commanded a trebuchet bombardment on the plaza where the formation was under. The explosion destroyed the surface of the plaza, leaving but a thin layer of land above it. That's perfect. Guys, I sent you the location. Let's attack it all at the same time. John called and started to move. All right. Kareem started preparing and fused the energy of the Ansei ward with his armor, growing 2 wings of light flying with them. Now, Mir didn't fall behind and flew up. The 3 Ansei holders stopped channeling their sword formation and flew upward above the center of Haygoth. The sky of the city, that was made of sandstone and copper-colored domes, was tainted with a heavy scent of blood and burnt flesh. This final move was to erase all this filth from Haygoth. The 3 met in the sky high above the plaza, and their Ansei wards were glimmering in their hands with brilliant light. Gentlemen, it was a pleasure, John said. It is all mine, Krylin. Kareem replied with a grateful face. Foo-foo. I admit I was having lots of fun lately, John. Mir foo-fooed while covering his smile. John? That's Krylin's real name? Kareem asked. It is strange you didn't overhear it till now. Anyway, I consider you a friend, and it is rude for me to keep it to myself till now. My name is John Hild Firemane, also known as John Dare of Winterhold. John patted Kareem's shoulder while saying so. What? Kareem was having a moment of unclarity, followed by another of confusion, then another of silence, ending it with another of turning to John with wide eyes. It makes sense now, Kareem said. Yeah, but are running out of time. John raised his sword up, signaling the 2 to follow his lead. You are the most wanted man to the Thalmor. Gods, you are real. I get that a lot. We're going down in 3. I'm a big fan. Go. John pulled Kareem down, and Mir synced his movement with the 2. 3 bolts of vibrant light descended on the plaza, breaking through the ground, and going down even more to the heart of the soul snare spell. The 3 blades obliterated through the runes and caused an explosion of magic energy that destroyed all the black soul gems gathered around. The consequences of the move were far from over. As the black soul gems were broken, thousands of souls were freed from the imprisonment of the formation, and as if the city felt these souls rising, the warmest rays of sunlight purged away the cold, gray skies caused by the soul snare. The nightmare was over for Hammerfell, and just beginning for the cult. All the undead, supported by the formation, crumbled to dust. The cultists who all synced their power to the formation were experiencing a devastating backlash due to the sudden loss of their magicka. The cult was cornered to a wall without a single chance to bite back. Under the rubble, Kareem staggered up and walked with heavy steps towards the 3 Ansei wards that were pinned into the grounds. He knelt in front of the swords and spoke. Ansei Maja, Ansei Raiden, and Ansei Halila. Thank you for your blessings. I'll see to your return to your resting place. Kareem said, then picked up the Ansei wards. Cough, cough. From another direction, a blonde high elf was staggering up and waving the dust away. Prince Kareem, what happened here? Lady Miranda? Kareem exclaimed. In front of him, there was Miranda, the high elf who appeared with John the first time he came to save Kareem and Strozen Kai. Also, she is John's woman. Yeah, that's me. Probably. Where is Krylin? She asked. Ignoring the probably, she said, Kareem pointed to the other side of the rubble. Master John, Lord Krylin is over there. Where he pointed, the rubble over that direction went flying by someone's push. There appeared Mirren lying above John, and the 2 were staring at each other with wide eyes. Shit, You're John, wait. I'm Mirren, right? Mirren backed off from John with a pale face. If I know that it would cost me destroying the worm cult to get the gay scene, I would have done that long ago. John said, while touching his lips, remembering how it felt. Oh no. Miranda held her head, foreseeing the following trouble. Oh no. Mirren held his head, not bearing that he fell the gay scene. Part 2. It is clear that High Elves Miranda and Mirren are the double form of the Elnafine No and the Mir Almarai. Still, each time Mir emerges then reverts to the two, their memories get mixed up and they share many emotions. Sometimes after they re-emerge, they get jumbled up with their identities for at least an hour. This time, it was the first time for the twins to be in relationships both at the same time, thus their feelings were jumbled up, and that ended with Mirren kissing John. No, it's in my head. I can't forget it. Don't touch my sister. Mirren was shouting at John. This brute Redguard bitch, don't get closer to my brother. Miranda was glaring at Isha. One of the most traumatizing memories that the two share right now is the sexual experiences. Kareem, my child, you're still a normal human. You can back away before it is too late. Prince Ader whispered to Kareem. Couldn't agree more. Kareem just disappeared in the background and went to deal with the aftermath of the battle. Make it stop. God damn it. Why do I have to remember those things? Mirren was having the shivers of his life. That woman, she is too dangerous to date my brother. Must do something. I guess the gay scene is getting more mental than I thought now. John said, I agree. My honey boo is finally back, but his mind is still unstable. By the way, how did they return? Isha asked. Mir exhausted himself. He told me that despite him being the original form, an Elnafi is not suitable to exist in the mortal world. Mirren and Miranda are stable and convenient for him to live as. They're like a battery-saving mode or whatever. John explained. You don't need to explain that much. Nothing about them is easy to understand anyway. Nothing about all of us, actually. Well said. The two separated Mirren and Miranda, who were violently arguing, and soon it all settled down. We are done out here. Kareem shouted from outside the pit that formed in the plaza. Wait, is there any trace of Zane or Zara? Isha shouted. No, Kareem replied as he approached. Rendered speechless, Isha was having it hard focusing. Most of the cultists were killed. The only remnants have fortified themselves into the city lord's palace. If the ones you are after are still in Hagoth, you'll find them there. Kareem said, Then we can't wait longer than this. It is the afternoon now, and we still have the advantage of sunlight. Let's strike the palace now. John forced himself up while chugging on a Magica potion. I've returned the Ansei wards to the king of Sentinel. Should I go bring them again? Kareem asked. No. John shook his head. Isha and I will march on the palace alone. No, Master John. I can. Kareem wanted to refute, but John stopped him. You have done more than enough, Kareem of Strozen Kai. Right now, I have a labor to finish, and she has unfinished business, right? Right. Isha nodded and grasped her spear of bitter mercy tighter. Let's go. John and Isha headed out to the final stage. On the way, Isha ran into her master Nagla, and John ran into his girlfriend Ela. Not many words were said. Isha handed her master the mask of the war chief, and John kissed Ela on the forehead. The two then walked among the crowd, and none stepped in their way. It was clear that those two were currently the only ones fit to face what is beyond that point. They reached the city lord's palace, which was on top of a hill. Its gate was clearly locked with a large amount of undead lurking behind. John held his staff in one hand and his blade over his shoulder, then barely pushed the palace's gate enough for one person to pass. John walked in first, then Isha followed, and the gate closed. Privacy was needed. Behind the gate, the palace was built in a traditional way, so all yards are supposed to be in the center of the building. This meant John will get all the privacy he needs. Still, as soon as they got in, the undead started crawling from every corner. Leave the greeting to me. John stopped Isha from taking action and clapped his hand twice. Wakey, wakey, sleepyhead. There is food here. John's words weren't for anyone other than the avid undead eater, the sin he created in front of Isha a long time ago, wrath. Stepping out from his cube, the large-boned samurai opened its mouth and lowered its posture, chomping on the first unlucky skeleton in its way. Odakuro wasn't done. Its blade started going left and right, tearing those puny undead apart without any consideration to the decorations of the palace. The place was already ruined, and the owner wouldn't miss a couple of walls. That's enough. After Wrath had its fun making for the long period he wasn't called for, John stopped him. Easily, John could determine where the cultists were hiding, and with a small hint of his aura, the cultists realized they could no longer hide and walked out to face him. Seeing the man that brought their endless armies to its knees, they feared him more than anything in the world. I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of ass, wait? No, and I'm all out of bubblegum. Hey, didn't I make the phrase better? Frankly, no idea. Isha shook her shoulders. Sure, John feigned that he was talking to Isha before shooting a chain lightning at the cultists. The terrified cultists couldn't react in time, and the spell got a number of them. Even with his strength, John was quite okay when it comes to playing dirty. As the spell exchange ended, the last cultist fell down into an overfried state. John proudly walked over the corpses of his victims, making sure they are dead and no traps are active. But once he stepped a few meters ahead, he started to feel something. He's right ahead, John said. Isha's eyes became firmer, and she took the lead. They walked and walked into the big palace until they reached the throne room. On the throne was a man sitting idly with a spear lying on him. He lazily rested his hand on his hand and just sat alone in the hall. No living or undead signals came from around him. John's flawless detection felt as if it was being tricked. The man's eyes were open but lifeless as expected. Once he sensed John and Isha, he didn't even move his lifeless eyes towards them, but rather stood up like a fool moved by strings. Brother. Isha faintly spoke, but as expected, dead men tell no tales. Something is off. John spoke. What? He doesn't have a bloodworm helm or the staff of worms. Only a man with a spear. John said. No one exited the palace. Isha said, a palace is not a building that can be entered or exited just from one door. John didn't like the situation, but eventually a fight had to start. Let's go. John's signal came before an attack arrives from Zane, meaning that the side that started the fight was John. Isha imagined that whatever monster possessing her brother would just go berserk and start attacking, not just stand there. Reality wasn't making it easy for her, but she could bother less now. She had to deliver her bitter mercy. John cast a simple fire bolt to move Zane from his place, but the latter skillfully blocked the spell with his spear and charged at John. As soon as the two were about to clash, John lowered his posture and slid on his knees, completely evading Zane's spear stab. While doing so, he tossed something in the air, and as he passed to the other side of Zane, he caught it. Ed, the old man's coin, worked in the favor of John, and he turned out stabbing at Zane's head with Maroon's razor. Huh, die. John's perfect execution and flawless movements would have worked any day of the week, but sadly, today was not the day. The razor couldn't even cut Zane's skin, who was slowly turning his head towards John. Damn, that's some skincare product you use, bro. Can you write it down for me? John was actually spooked, but his mouth kept running anyway. Zane's moved as fast as lightning and swung his spear upward down at John, who evaded by teleporting to the other side of Zane. Wasting no time, John fused Greed and Maroon's razor, creating Maroon's needle, and with the penetration specialist, John thrust it deep into Zane's ear from the side. The needle dagger was already deep into Zane's head, but no effect happened. John was kicked away, as well as the chance to one-shot Zane. That's nasty, John complained. What do you think? Isha asked as she and John started using another strategy. His skin is worse than before. We can't wound him even with a Daedric artifact. Let's try the spear, John said. Isha agreed almost immediately and rushed at Zane with her spear's edge pointing down, Once he was in her stabbing range, she used a martial skill. Spirit Spear, Ghost Strike. Isha's attack moved in mysterious directions, making it almost impossible to track. Just like that, her spear was resting deep in the shoulder of Zane. Qua! He felt pain. He was wounded. As if he was a machine activating from a long slumber, Zane started screaming, and all the clothes on his upper half were ripped off by the act of his violent magicka. Zane's eyes finally moved, and his hand grabbed Isha's spear from the shaft, making it impossible for her to retreat. With the other hand, he used the serpent spear to stab at her. Shit! Knowing what sort of trouble she was in, Isha was about to abandon the spear and retreat, but a large shadow moved. Nefertiti made a large chain on shadows that shackled Zane's arm. Wrath appeared with a large metal chisel and fixed it above Zane's arm. John was the last to move, as he jumped high enough to be above Zane and waved his hand towards the metal chisel by whatever he was holding in his hand. Clang, rip, crack. The effect was to behold. Zane's right arm was ripped off completely. John landed beside Isha and helped her pull the spear out of Zane that also retreated. Growl, growl. Zane's was completely missing an arm. He started growling like a beast while eyeing John with hate. On the other hand, John appeared to be holding a hammer that he used to hit the chisel, and that wasn't just any hammer. It was Sunder. It seems that he is invulnerable to physical attack, except from your spear. Once he is struck, it is possible to deal damage to him. John said, asterisk huff, that is not, watch out. Isha was about to say something, but she noticed a certain movement and warned John. Zane's ripped-off arm started moving on its own, flying toward John and aiming the spear toward his heart. John's eyes turned cold and gave a space for Isha to move. She hurriedly stabbed the arm with her spear and pinned it to the ground. Good job. John didn't waste a second and fused greed with Sunder, turning them into Big Sunder, a larger version of the hammer that weight can be controlled. John made Big Sunder's weight be almost a ton before he descends with it on the arm. Crack! Grah! Zane felt pain once again as his arm turned into meat paste under John's might strike. In actuality, the whole palace shook from the strike, revealing how much power Sunder has. That's a good plan so far. We will rip him limb from limb and destroy them. Nefertiti, seal each limb we destroy. Isha and John finally had a plan to put down Zane. Once he is completely destroyed, there will be no vessel for Mannimarco to reincarnate into, and the game would be over. Or so they thought. Who is the king of worms, if not the vilest being ever walked Nirn? Part 3. Rip, crack, rip, crack, rip, crack. Zane was being dismantled one attack after another. When he lost his weapon arm, he was completely useless from that point. His magic casting ability was already bad to begin with, and he needed the Staff of Worms, which was somehow not on him. Right now, he was reduced to 1.5 legs, 1 shoulder, a torso and a chest, and a badly destroyed head. Isha's heart was breaking from doing so to his body. She knew her brother is long dead and his soul is no longer in this world, but that didn't mean that doing this to his reanimated monster corpse was all right. It is a huge sin to beat a dead body in the Redguard traditions, but what to do? At last, she stood over him with her spear pressing against his chest. Sister. Yet those words came out. He spoke the forbidden words that last time they were uttered. His spear was aiming at Isha's heart, causing John to take it for her. Not again. You won't do it again. She replied with a solemn, yet tragic face. Kill me. His request was so simple, yet Isha couldn't find herself believing what she was hearing in absolute denial. Don't play tricks on me. You hear me? Never. He is not. Beside her, John spoke. She turned to John, not believing what he said. The mind has a consciousness of its own, a depth not related to the soul. Even when the undead creatures get to be moved by artificial Daedric souls, the deep mind is still active. It doesn't feel, but it conveys its desires. Necromancers would normal mute their thralls, but when Zane said, just now is his mind's lingering desire for rest, for death. As academic and cold John's explaining was, Those words brought a strange peace to Isha. She looked at her older brother's body with remorse and pity. All right, my tears are long since dried, my farewells are long since said. Rest in peace, brother. On clean stab with the spear to the core of the undeath in Zane's body was enough to bring an end. The vestige of undeath was completely ripped apart by the spear of bitter mercy. Isha walked away in cold sadness, and John remained watching and analyzing. He wasn't feeling like it was over as his mind was screaming, "It can't be that easy." As he wanted it all to end, he gathered Zane's body parts and put them together and covered the body out of respect. Zane's serpent spear was put down beside his owner. John's mind was still busy, but his heart was begging for him to raise no more flags. Today was a long day already, and the sun is falling. Ain't that a bit touching? The good guys won. The glory goes to the heroes. The evildoers get nothing. Oh. Yet the flag was already ruffling when a very disturbing voice sounded through the throne hall. Who is it? Show yourself. Isha was 100% vigilant, but the voice that came was from outside her perception. At ease. John raised his hand. We are speaking to a Daedric prince. John's words made Isha freeze. Actually, John himself was almost freaking out. Great. Isn't that just great? Daedric princes are so common these days, we can't surprise a mere mortal anymore. Was I that expected? The voice showed a hint of disapproval and anger. I guess dancing on the edges of sanity with all the labors going has its perks. John replied while thinking fast. I guess I'm speaking to Lord Clavicusvile. John's fast take-up was satisfying to the Daedra. You are quite cunning, mortal. Figure out I was a Daedric prince. Figure out who I am. You're good. Interested in some deal while we're at it? Oh, no. John bluntly refused. Well, you're that guy called Kryla, right? I've heard about you. Actually, all Oblivion has heard about you. Oh, am I that famous? John was taken aback. Indeed, aren't you that Krylan from the Sith, the one that stole a town from the middle of Molai Ball's domain? Every Daedra in Cold Harbor knows your name. Darth Krylan of the Sith was the prank John used to go by with in Cold Harbor. That's flattering. You wouldn't know the surprise on Ball's face once he knew you are laboring for Azura. I mean, can you imagine his ugly face twisting uglier? Oh, no, I wouldn't. Whatever then. I think my work here is done anyway. You killed my labor and all. Congratulations. Oh, wait. Your work? Isha said. Right, you are the sister. Congratulations to you too as well. Your brother is now free as he finished his labors. I'll let his soul go. Oh. John and Isha looked at each other in shocked expressions. He finished his labors? John asked. You heard me. How? This was no joking matter. The labors should be 7. Zane should be in his 6th when he was discovered back in Elsewhere. Isn't that obvious? We skipped the 6th labor with him and gave him the 7th that he just finished. Oh, what was that? John shouted. Isn't it obvious? Clavicusvile spoke in a mocking tone. His labor was to delay you. The world turned cold all of a sudden around John and Isha. A strange energy was felt beneath their feet. Fuck. Shit. What is this? Nefertiti. He called for Nefertiti, and she entered his shadow. The throne. After looking through the shadow world, she pointed at the throne. John didn't wait any longer and shot a fireball at the throne of Haygoth's lord, blowing it apart. John, what is this feeling? Isha felt as if she was sinking into the ground beneath her feet. John immediately called out, pride, and warded himself off the effect of that energy, as well as Isha. He held her up and pointed where the throne was. Look, there is a secret passage beneath the throne. Zane was guarding that. John said. Isha nodded with an overwhelmed face and spoke. Right, Zura. She should be down there. Driven by finding her last relative, the widow of Zane, who was kidnapped during the attack on the Ansei Pyramid, Isha ran towards the secret passage going down a narrow stairway. John didn't leave her and followed only a step behind. Where they arrived was a secret chamber. It was quite large and wide with many people there, living people as well as dead people. That was the current theme of Hey Goth, so the scene shouldn't be terrifying, yet once John and Isha arrived, they were spooked beyond words. Sure enough, the living people were cultists, and the dead people were human sacrifices. The way everything was arranged was sick and scary. Those sacrifices were hanged from upside down, and their throats were slit like sheep in a slaughterhouse. In the middle of the room, the cultists gathered in a circle, kneeling around a large pool of blood and worshipping something in its center. There where Zara was found, in the center of the pool. She was tied up to a stick and stripped naked. She was not conscious, but that wasn't what was wrong with her. What was wrong was her stomach. It was swollen as if she was a pregnant woman in the last month. This was all the wrong things in the wrong places. Evil worship, sacrifices, blood pools, pregnant woman. Those like John who thought they have seen it all would doubt themselves in front of such evil. You filthy dogs, you filthy sons of bitches. On the other hand, Isha was raging and reached the climax of madness. The cultists realized John and Isha were present and rushed to stop them from interrupting the ritual, but Isha was unleashed. She killed the cultists in the most violent of ways, breaking their bones and stepping on their skulls. Meanwhile, John was walking slowly towards the woman hung on the blood pool, his eyes on her stomach. He must have realized something. Isha killed all cultists in less than a minute, no matter how strong they were, and that was enough for John to understand. Those monsters, those sons of bitches. Isha, I'll murder them 1,000 times over and over. Isha, I'll burn your families and laugh at them. Isha, what? She left no one alive to begin with, then started mutilating the bodies. She didn't have the mind to listen to this, but John said it anyway. He didn't have the mind to care about anything as well. We were wrong. He said, we misread the signs. The reincarnation of Manamarco, it was never Zane. John removed the protection of himself and Isha. The dreadful energy they felt earlier was now clear where it came from. It's inside her. Parfor was inside Zara. That's one question, one of many. Why isn't Zane's body the reincarnation of Manamarco? Why was he used in the first place? What is the secret of the spear of bitter mercy being the only thing that can harm Zane only in the hands of Isha? Why was Zara kidnapped in the first place? Why was she used for the demonic ritual? What's inside her? There are a lot of questions about this day, and to those many questions, one answer made of one word could be said. Fate. Fate brought them all together, and the power of bonds has strong magic to it. Zane happened to fit certain criteria that served the purpose of Manamarco very well. The only flaw in the equation was Isha, that by her role brought John into the picture. John was also a factor. If he hasn't corrupt Azure Star, Manamarco's plan would have been delayed, and Isha would have never found out about the Worm Cult's plan. After all, she was the part of the equation that should have taken the spear of bitter mercy far away and never returned to Hammerfell. It may all sound complicated, but that's how fate works. The instrument of God that plays in mysterious ways. Now, if one wanted a satisfying answer, then fate it is. Unfortunately, a certain someone was never this easy on himself regarding the answers, and he wanted the truth, all truth and nothing but the truth. And that started when he put Zara down on the ground with the help of Isha. What should we do? Isha asked. Get that thing out of her. He said. Ow, cut it out. No, please. Isha begged. I can't afford to lose her. Isha's words were said in grief. Zara is her last relative. She is dying. The blood, it was there to feed whatever comes out. John said, that whatever is Manamarco and is growing inside Zara. Why? Couldn't he just choose to possess any newborn and get whatever he wants? No, the answer doesn't need much thinking either. If someone goes through all that to do a thing rather than choosing the easier option, then it is because the first one is better. Why would a child growing in a Zara be better than any other woman? Answering that means one should take a look. John used his staff to make a vision and see the inside of Zara's womb. The skin, muscles, and organs turned invisible, and both John and Isha could see the thing inside her. That's not a baby, John said. That's clearly not a baby. Isha agreed. It was something that doesn't grow into humans, an egg. Not just an egg, but an egg with a golden shell. Your sister-in-law is a human? John asked. You are joking right now. Do I look like I am joking to you? I thought I was insane, and here it gets crazier than me? Why would an egg grow into a human rather than a baby? The answer was just one possibility. It was put inside her. John and Isha concluded at the same time. If it was out, you could just teleport it out, right? No. The egg's life force is already in unison with Zara. Look, Zara's womb formed these birth cords-like things, and they don't transfer food. This egg is killing Zara. There was no way out of this. John's extensive knowledge led him to nowhere against this. If he forces the egg out, it will kill Zara. The other option was to just stab Zara right away and kill her and the baby. The options were clear in front of John and Zara, but before John takes a decision, he remembered something. Nefertiti, you remember that day a few years ago when we were fighting the Bloodsail clan? John asked. Yes, Human. Nefertiti replied and appeared beside John. Then you still remember that stupid Lochther? Alina's griffin? Wasn't his egg possessed by the shadow ether before we separate it to make it an agreed? John said. Yes. Then can you do it again? I can't do much against this golden egg, but maybe the shadow world has its own backdoor, right? John's reasoning was all right. It was a risk, but it is better than killing Zara. The egg is inevitably hatching, and whatever comes is no good. Striking it through the shadow world is better than just doing nothing. Nefertiti agreed and disappeared for a while before appearing once again. Human, ugly baby, what am I supposed to do about that? Did you find a way to do anything? John asked. Yes, I cut his energy supply. You should try to crawl out now. John and Isha were struck by a good surprise and a bad feeling at the same time. That demonic baby, or whatever, it seems all the sacrifices are here for it. John said, we need to get rid of them. Also that blood. Isha said, fuck it, I'll burn it all. John wasn't even considering anything anymore but dealing with the evil that is about to be born. John cast Scotch on everything that is available. No blood or corpses were left behind. John, something is happening, Isha said. John ran back to Zara and checked on her to see how the egg reacting. Fucking monster. This thing can no longer absorb from the soul, so it is switching to the blood. What kind of demonic sci-fi shit is this? John wanted to just end this egg in one stab, but with Zara's life on the line, he had to think straight. And there was it. He went through the cube and found something that could be used. An injector, a device he made based on some otherworldly technology. Its purpose was to deliver the medicine directly into the bloodstream. But neither the world nor John were this advanced in medicine. He doesn't have any drug to finish off that monster, and even if he does, it has to go through Zara. But today was his lucky day. His head was working on a rapid pace that he found a solution right by the next second. His blood. His blood is strong, potent, and wild. It also has the ability to control the vampires that consume it. No matter what kind of monster in the egg or whose soul it has, it is no match for John's blood as an infant. Without thinking, John used the reversed mechanism of the injector and stuck its needle into himself. He then changed the needle and injected his blood into Zara. What are you doing? Trust me or not? I'm not sure. It will work. He was struck mad by the possibilities and the amount of thinking he went through in the past few seconds. Just like that, he started observing his blood flow into Zara's bloodstream and controlled it. There is more to John's blood than what meets the eye. John has learned how to control his inner body when he was imprisoned in the Briarheart tree. After he broke through the ebb and blood stage, he even had more control. Now, John controlled his blood carefully to make it reach the golden egg without harming Zara. And here it is, he reached it. You fucking ugly bastard. Got you. Nefertiti cut the energy and John cut the blood. Now this thing is all isolated. John could even see the resisting will of whatever being in that egg. Piece by piece, John was conquering it. We can get the egg out now, John said, and let his telekinetic power run through Zara. She was already in a coma, so he made sure she stays that way. Her body was torn from the inside by the existence of that golden egg. John never before scanned the body of a pregnant woman, but Zara's state was the closest thing to be, and it was a mess. Nothing was in its place. I'll use magic to pull that thing out. I'm trying to isolate the walls of the womb from the egg, create a containing ward around the barrier, and infusing the space law at the same time. I'll be able to teleport out, but I need to maintain Zara from collapsing. I can't do that while I'm fighting the baby monster, so I need you to heal her. Here's some staves, scrolls, and potions, and everything you need. John started to dump half the work on the overwhelmed Isha, who was just nodding and trying to remember. John's skill in magic started to shine as he operated a magical birth surgery, sort of by teleporting the baby out of the womb. Once John maintained the ward around the egg, he used his other hand to stabilize Zara's body, then completely separated it from the egg. 1 second, 2, 3, nothing happened. John quickly teleported the egg out and kept it held mid-air while maintaining Zara's womb by another spell and leaving the rest to Isha. Now, it was all him and the golden egg. This was no normal creature. The egg looked very evil despite its golden luster. It wasn't something that was manufactured by alchemy, but it was rather organic. What kind of an evil being would lay such an egg? That cold, dark energy is not from this world. It is not magica or Daedric energy. It is something else. As expected, it is otherworldly. Mannimarco possessed the ghost world in the abyss, which is a dumpster to all the things that roam the other void. Mannimarco acquired that and wanted to use it to his own convenience. Not a fucking chance. John dropped the egg on the ground and applied pressure. Cracks started to appear on the golden egg, and a small hand came out. After the hand came a strange limb, followed by the full crumble of the golden shell. The creature was beyond hideous. It had a very distorted face and 6 limbs. The additional 2 were on its back. It is obviously immature, but it wasn't the case for long. Once that demonic infant saw the light, it screeched and moved its limbs looking for blood. Once it detected some, it turned around and started crawling towards it, but things didn't go the way it wanted. The infant's body started growing. It was coming together and started to grow bigger in a chaotic manner. The being didn't just grow bigger, but started to lose its energy. It started to become thinner at a certain point, then it started to wilt and die. What the fuck was that? John couldn't bring himself to do anything as he watched the circle of life and death consume the being faster than he ever imagined. In the end, the being aged and became quite old, turning into a husk, and ceasing all its movements 1 inch away from the blood it painstakingly craved for. So that's it? John asked. He was disappointed, utterly disappointed beyond words. Whatever incarnation that was, it could have certainly done better. Was that the reincarnation Mannimarco wanted? How on Nern was that being even capable of living with that appearance? What kind of sick and twisted logic created such an abomination? Was there a point for thousands to die just for one pathetic being such as this to come to existence? John looked closer at the being, analyzing its features. He shook his head, then nodded in giving up. The being was clearly a hybrid, a mix of a werewolf and a vampire. So that was what it meant to be. That's why Zane was targeted. Mannimarco wanted his reincarnation vessel to be invincible, so he created Zane to be so. He didn't want to inhabit Zane's dead body, but wanted a fresh newborn for himself, a body befitting the king of worms. He probably took genes from Zane's newly formed hybrid physique and put it into the golden egg. The golden egg is an otherworldly object, but it was a method to create a body. It needed to be inside a mother, and Mannimarco desired Zara, Zane's widow, to be the one. The reason? Why not? The spear of bitter mercy was a threat for a couple of reasons. First, it can kill anything, and that includes the invincible body that is being created. The second, the spear is associated with the bitter mercy, the act of causing harm to those whom one loves. If someone who loves Zane used that spear on him, Zane's invincible body would be harmed. Such irony, to all end like this. Or is it? Once John turned away, something went out of the being's body and sneaked on John wishing to inhabit him. Get away from Human. Yet in John's shadow, there was always the vigilant partner who watches his back. Whatever that is, it received Nefertiti's hit and broke on the run. John's face hardened, his rage boiled, and his aura ignited. "Keep her still," I called for healers, he said before storming out of the secret room, straight to the throne hall. He looked around, but the body of Zane was gone. "Oomph. You have unfinished business with me, so never think about running away." Is almost equal to, 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 is almost equal to. Just to remind you guys, Chapter 500 is the last in the volume, and it is available on P4TRE0N for free as my birthday gift to you. See, my birthday, and I'm giving gifts. It is also a large chapter, so prepare to stalk for days that you're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.